O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
Oh, hey, everybody. Episode 95 coming right at you. Phil and I are here in Bozeman, Montana. Now, this episode.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. When I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels. Oh, number 7.
Welcome, everybody, to the hunting...
Still in Santa mode.
Yeah, hello, Stephen. Hello, Stephen. Hello, Stephen. Oh, hello, everybody. It's the Hunting Collective. Episode 95 coming at you, right, Phil? Episode 95?
Best ofs, volume 3.
Volume 3. We were talking about what are we going to do for episode 100, Phil? What are we going to do?
I have no idea. I suggested we record your the live birth of your second child, and then we just air that unedited.
Unedited, the live birth.
Yep. What do you think?
Sounds like a great idea.
Okay. I don't think you have to run it by your
Could we do
wife.
it here in the studio? I don't know
we
what the
did
laws
just get the
are.
ventilation fixed. So,
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's important. That's something you really need to know.
I think it's sanitary enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
The child will be born probably right about now. I mean, we're recording this prior to that happening, but this is going to be pretty close to the time of the child's arrival. Actually, my wife's calling. Let me pick that up, make sure she's not having the baby right now. Yes, honey.
Hi, sorry, I'll just be a minute. I'm busy.
Are you not having the baby, are you?
No.
Oh, okay.
I like that you always think I will, so you always answer, though.
Okay, we're doing a podcast. I'll just call you right back, okay?
Okay, how long do you think?
Well, probably 20, 30 minutes.
Can I just ask you one question, or is it... I can't.
Yeah, you're on the podcast right now, so you asked away.
Okay. Okay, you talking to? I'm talking to Daddy.
Hello, son.
Basically, I don't have Christmas lights that work for the tree, so I can go to Target now, and we can have that as an activity tonight, which means he doesn't nap. Or would you rather wait till tomorrow and have him napped in case you can come home early?
Nap.
Nap, okay.
Okay,
Right.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. God, there's a look behind the curtain, Phil.
Wow.
What it's like to live my life.
Some real dad shit right
Did
there.
anybody
I know all about that?
Did anybody catch the email notification
Oh,
during
yeah.
that little fit? Anyway, this is episode 95, volume 3 of the best of. Real excited to bring it to you here in the middle of January when I'm supposedly right now off rearing my child, and so hopefully if that happens, Phil will put something in here to announce it in this episode. It might happen next episode. You never know. There's a lot of suspense around that occurrence. But my wife's first appearance, and we will always like to make sure my kids have naps, right, Phil?
It's very important.
It's important to have naps. I don't know why we don't take more naps.
I have been thinking about this a lot recently.
Hunting is a real big nap time activity. Turkey hunting especially.
So I'm definitely taking up hunting then.
Yeah, when you take up turkey hunting this spring with me, we will take naps.
It's just going to be an excuse to take naps for a couple of days.
We're definitely going to take naps.
Okay.
So this best of, it started poorly. I know. I understand. But you're just going to get better. It's all about bear attacks, Phil. And we love bear attacks here at the Hunting Collective, and also in the hunting community. Bear attacks seem to get more attention than just about anything. And it's hard to really know why. I mean, we have a lot of inferences that we're drawn to these animals, we're drawn to the predatory instincts. It's also really compelling when you're battling against a great beast, right, Phil?
I wouldn't know.
What would you do if you ran into a grizzly bear? What's this tactic? You're going to try some like Star Wars type of move on it.
Not at all, no. I would go for the bear spray, and if that didn't work, I think I'd do... I'd probably do the cover my neck and roll into a ball. Is that what you're supposed to do? I think they either say make a lot of noise and look large, or curl up into a ball.
Which one are you going with?
Oh, probably the ball.
Yeah.
I don't think... that's not the right thing, right?
Listen, I don't know what the right thing is. You'll learn from this podcast that there's a lot of ideas about what you should do. There's a lot of ideas about what you need to do, but when it actually happens, it's so frantic that it doesn't often occur the way that you'd think. That's pretty obvious. But we have Todd Orr. He's probably the most famous of the bear attack victims that we've had on the podcast. He was attacked here close to Bozeman, down near Ennis, Montana, some years ago. And the video of him walking out, face bloodied, head hanging, part of his scalp hanging off, became an internet sensation. And what struck everyone about him was how calm he was when this was all going down. And you'll even hear years later, while he still wears the scars, he still looks at it in a very pragmatic way. And you'll find that about the rest of our bear attack survivors. They look at these attacks in pretty simplistic ways. Most of them, even if we get to the end here, you'll hear Barrie Gilbert, his version of his attack, where he says he charged the bear. Brad Jameson, who had his testicles removed from their container by the bear, is that the right way to say that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
The scrotum by a bear, talks about not really having any anger towards the bear or really any fear towards that bear. And you'll hear the same from Todd Orr. No one that I've talked to that's actually been through this process, as wild and life-altering as it is, holds any ill will toward the bear, the collective bear or the individual bear. And so that's as interesting as anything to me, being that these three gentlemen were maimed, mauled pretty substantially by these bears, and they carry those scars with them today. Most dramatically, Barrie Gilbert, but also Brad and Todd are carrying these things with them for the rest of their lives. So there's a weird connection with the animal that I think these guys get. But we will just say we love a good bear attack story, and then we love to learn from it. And I'll say, Phil, when I'm walking around in the woods, I'm thinking about these stories. I'm thinking about what happened to them, thinking about how they came upon the bear, and also thinking about, if it happens, what do I need to do? And so people have asked why we cover bear attack so much. Well, one, we like clicks and downloads. That's great. We will admit to that. But two, you can learn something from these, and you should learn something from these stories. And so that's why we put together this best of Volume 3. Are these all BP or PP, Phil?
Barrie Gilbert is the only...
That's the only PP?
Did we decide what PP and BP...
BP is before Phil.
Yes,
PP is
post Phil. Yeah,
yes,
with a little mix, mashed up there.
Nonsensical. But
Barrie
yes.
Gilbert is PP. The other two are BP.
Barrie Gilbert is PP.
Put that on a T-shirt
or
something like that.
Put on a T-shirt. So yeah, some of these were longer stories. We chopped them all down just to the details of the attacks, so you can see the similarities and differences of each attack, each occurrence, and how, within those moments, how these three men felt about the experience. So hopefully you will enjoy these attacks. We're going to start it off with Todd Orr. And again, I said Todd is probably the most famous of these three, although Brad Jameson, our second bear attack victim, became pretty famous from our podcast. We had lots of downloads, lots of interest in telling his story. But I think overall, Todd Orr is the most popular. And so we'll start with him. Enjoy Todd Orr.
I guess I grew up on an older road, a pedal to the metal.
And that leads me to the thing that I don't know if you're reluctantly famous for this, but famous for it anyway, is a bear attack that happened a couple years back now.
Yes.
And what's interesting to me about it, hopefully people, if they know your name, Todd Orr, and they've seen the now famous video of you walking out with the rather fantastic...
my scalp hanging
with your scalp hanging
over my ear,
off.
and yeah.
So we'll get to that. I want to get to that that whole story, obviously. But it's more interesting to me that what happened afterwards, right? You upload the video to Facebook, correct? Mm-hmm. And it gets millions of views within a couple of...
I think it was like 39 million views in 48 hours or something like that, yes.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I didn't even know what a viral video was at that point. I was just like, I better take this video to show a couple buddies. I had a pretty crazy weekend.
Yeah.
And then,
my weekend was crazier than yours.
Yeah, and then a couple days later, I'm like, okay, I guess there's probably 6 or 8 guys that'll want to see it. So instead of trying to send it separately to each one, I'll just throw it on Facebook and I'll have 50 people look at it. Didn't realize it'd be 39 million people looking at it. But
so let's go forward in time a little bit. 48 hours after you posted it and you see what it's become. Where's your head at? Like what,
Well, within a couple hours of posting it, my phone starts to blow up and I'm getting texts and emails and phone calls and messages, and my voice box fills up and I delete them all because I'm like, I don't know what all these numbers are from, and start realizing that people are trying to contact me. Pretty much every news, radio show, news station out there is like, wants to do an interview. And I've got people like, hey, this is so-and-so from CNN in New York. And if we can get you on a plane in the morning, to get you out here for a live interview at 8 a.m. And I'm like, I still haven't even washed the blood out of my hair yet, So it was kind of crazy. I have to go to surgery the next day on my arm. And so it was kind of out of control, and I'm not the kind of person, or wasn't the kind of person that would want to sit down and talk to people. I'm kind of do my own thing. I don't want to be in front of a camera.
Your life would say, things just like, do.
No thanks. So I didn't respond to anybody. I've got hundreds, probably had 500 emails, and just, phone was just blowing up. So I just didn't respond to anybody. I just deleted everything and just kind of trying to heal up and do my own thing. But then eventually it's like, okay, it wouldn't end. People keep knocking on my door, the local news stations. So, okay, it's time to do an interview and just get them off my back. And then I was like, okay, that's not too bad. I can do one more. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, a podcast. And before I know it, it's kind of just on a regular thing now. Still 2 years later, it's still going on. Here we are.
Here we are. I love knives, but we're here to talk about that. Yeah, that's the most interesting thing to me about it. What if you had to look back on the last couple of years and what's going on? Because I have a list here of stories on Fox News, CNN, CBS, Huffington Post, Daily Caller, New York Post, Men's Health, and then pretty much every local news channel you can enlist, many hunting podcasts, including Randy Newberg and others. And now here we are. If you had to look back on that, what do you think? Was it just a sensationalist, like the video that started and all the sensationalism around it? How do you examine that and you're, looking back at it?
Well, looking back, I think a lot of people, I always kind of wondered, why did this happen? Why did it just blow up like that? And it's like, well, a lot of people like the gore side of it and my bloody arm with tendons sticking out. But then just being attacked by a grizzly bear is pretty rare. And then having the video an hour later, as soon as I got to the truck and to safety and, and just the whole story together. And I think people are like, how could you even take the the time to take a video. Why weren't you at the hospital? And I'm like, well, I spent an hour hiking out. I've assessed my wounds. I know I'm not going to bleed to death. I'm not going into shock. My body's calmed down. The adrenaline rush is starting to fade. And it's like, well, another 30 seconds for video really isn't going to matter. I still have a half-hour drive to the hospital. And so I think people just, I don't know, it's just something so different. Caught a lot of people off guard, and they go, oh, I got to show my buddy. And it just exploded across the world. I mean, different countries offer me to fly me to Australia for a news interview.
The Australians would like something like this, wouldn't they? They're like, yeah, that's our guy.
Like, oh, that'd be a great trip I'd love to do, but not till I heal up first. Yeah. I don't want to sit in a hotel room with bandages all over me in Australia for a week, but thanks anyway.
Do you have any crazy stories from all that attention that came up along the way that shocked you even more than just the normal attention?
I think just more of the thing that people would think that, okay, the next morning I'm going to get on a plane and fly somewhere when I've got tendons sticking out of my arm, and my scalp's hanging off. I just surprised at how much the media was like trying to get me to do something, and to commit to something. And it's just like, I have surgery. I have a healing to do. I can't go anywhere for weeks. I've got a brace on my arm that I have to wear for 6 weeks to keep the tendons from tearing out again. And so just a little crazy how quickly that went and how people wouldn't give up.
So you're saying they didn't really care about you is what you're saying.
I don't think so.
More
they
about
just
your
wanted the story. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it boils down to, I always say, I think news is always buttressed by, things become more controversial, more attention when there's video involved, especially in social media. Mm-hmm. So I think this boils down to, a lot of the attention boils down to the fact that you had the mindset to take the video. I think most people, I remember watching it the first time going, he took a video. This guy is, and he's talking like, hey, how's it going? Half my head's hanging off.
Yeah.
So we got to cover that. We got to take people through the moment that you picked your phone up and started to record. You kind of already gone over that, but take us a little deeper into, what you were thinking.
Well, it wasn't until I got back to the truck, after both attacks, and I've got an hour hike out, and the whole time hiking out, I'm just paying attention. Okay, I could run into another bear here or something. So I'm looking at my wounds, and I'm watching, got bear spray in my hand and a gun in this hand. And it wasn't until I got to the truck and I finally felt like, okay, I'm safe. I'm not going to bleed to death. I'm not going to get attacked again. I'm at the truck. And my first thought was there's going to be other people coming up here on Saturday morning of bow season to go hunt. And so I need to warn people of this aggressive bear. And so I was thinking, well, I'll put a note on the bulletin board and try to warn people. But, I dripping blood all over and I couldn't get my arm to move. So that didn't work. I'm like, okay, I guess it's just time to go to the hospital. And I'm like, God, I better record this real quick. I don't know. I just was like, I got to show a couple buddies how crazy my weekend is. And there's a couple friends of mine that we always at the end of the weekend would share our hunting stories. Two guys that are kind of like my best friends. And it's like, we always hey, what'd you see? How'd you do this weekend? And it was kind of those two guys were on my mind. And it wasn't till the next day when I'm like, well, there's a couple other guys that'll want to see it. And I really had never even thought about putting it out there this is going to be some great video people want to see. This is just and that's why I think it came across as pretty real, because it wasn't me trying to set something up.
Yeah, you were trying to get likes or trying to drive
I didn't even, that wasn't my thing. So it was just take this video to show some people that are friends. It's, stuff can happen out there. You got to be careful. And
were you fairly active on social media before that, or posting a lot? Or
all I ever did was post photos about once every 6 months. Maybe I went to southern Utah hiking, so I just put an album up with 30 photos just so my friends could see photos, and that was it. I never posted anything and talked about anything, or zero. If you go back and look at the history, there was nothing except some pictures posted for 5 years until 2 years ago, and it all changed. I still don't do it a lot. I try to just keep up with a few things and let people know what's going on, but I'm not a daily poster usually.
It's hard to be when you live a life outside.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the actual story. For those that don't know, we'll try to get as much detail into that day as possible.
Sure.
October 1st, 2016.
Yes.
I would say this is probably, in the modern era, or at least in the social media era, probably the most famous bear attack that there is. I mean, I thought about this and thought about other bear attacks and other attacks that we've known of, and tried to compare the iconic image of you walking out or being at your truck there. And that would be my take on it. Just how much people were drawn to that, and were drawn to the words you were saying as you were filming in the video. So
right.
I think it's important that people understand from soup to nuts exactly what happened. So, October 1st, 2016, I think let's first set the scene. Like, what area are you hunting? Where are you, and why? Why are you there?
Okay, it was during bow season, and it was a Saturday morning. I'd been working for the Forest Service for the last couple months, like 60 hours a week, trying to get all of our trail work done. So I finally had a day off, and I'm like, okay, I got these things done. I can go out and just do my own thing and hike on my own time. And I thought, well, it's, hunting season, the regular general season's coming up in a couple weeks, so I'm just going to get out and get up in the high country and look around and see if I can locate some elk and get an idea where I might want to go hunting later. So I got up early in the morning and drove over to Ennis and hiked up by Sphinx Mountain is where I was at, over in the Madison Valley. And I got to the trailhead at probably an hour before daylight. And that's usually when I'm hunting or doing anything, I'm always up early. So I'm up there early, get up to the high country at daylight when I would have the best chance to see some elk. So I get my pack on, my bear spray, my pistol, and I had a wolf tag, and I've never shot a wolf. And I thought, well, if the wolf season was open, so I'll have my pistol with me in case I get a chance at a wolf. But otherwise, I wasn't hunting at all. Yeah. That was just more of a scouting for elk.
And what pistol are you carrying?
At this time, I've got a 10mm. Yep. It's a 1911 Rock Island Armory 10mm, and I've got a scope on it. I made a scope mount for it and put a regular pistol long eye relief scope on it. So it really wasn't a good bear protection.
Yeah, it wasn't for
because
bear
it's this big, heavy thing that you can't really.
Not that a 10mm isn't a good round.
Yeah, but you'd be point and shoot with the scope if something was charging you, and it's not a quick draw. I had just a shoulder holster, but really wasn't concerned about bears. I mean, I know they're out there. I spend a lot of time in the woods. I see bears all the time, but usually they go the other direction or they kind of watch you and they kind of meander off. Didn't think there was going to be an issue, so that wasn't my concern. Had my bear spray just in case as well, and took off up the trail in the dark, and just a little flashlight out there, and just every minute or 30 seconds I'd just be like, hey, bear coming up the trail, just in case. It's like I don't want to run into one in the dark for sure.
Yeah, so you're aware.
Yeah, I'm totally aware of it. I spend my life out there, so I'm aware of it. I know there's bears in the area. I see the sign all the time, and so I'm working my way up the trail, and it's about 3.5 miles up, and just starting to get daylight. And I step out into this opening, and I'm kind of in a hurry because I'm trying to get up as far as I can by daylight. So I'm just moving along pretty fast pace. And I step out into this opening and look up, and at the other end of the opening, this sow grizzly and two cubs just step out. And we see each other at the same time, and both of us stop. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, there's a grizzly bear. And she turns immediately and runs up the trail and over the ridge and just disappears.
How far away when you first saw her?
This is like 80 yards away, maybe.
Okay,
so quite
close.
A ways, yeah. I mean, it's not something I was really concerned about at this point. I'm like, okay, I don't need to even have bear spray out yet. It's clear up there. She's running over the ridge. Not too worried. So I wait about a minute and didn't see her. So I'm like, okay, she's gone. I'll never see her the rest of the day. So I'll just go the opposite direction and do my thing all day. No big deal. And so I took a few steps up the trail, heading the other direction, and I heard something, a noise, a branch or something caught my attention, and I turned and looked over my left shoulder, and she had dropped her cubs and had circled around the ridge and came in behind me, probably downwind to get my scent. And as I turned, I see her out of the corner of my eye, and she's coming over the ridge, wide open, 30, 40 mile an hour charge, and her ears are laid back, and she's just screaming through the brush, stuff's flying, and she's just full charge.
Yeah.
And so I have my bear spray hanging right on a chest holster, and I just instinctively pulled my bear spray, pulled the safety clip out just in case, looked back up, kind of expecting a bluff charge, and looked back up, and there she is, like 30 feet. She covered that distance in like 2 seconds. And she's not slowing down. She's not bluff charging. She's not checking me out. She has her ears laid back in a full charge. And I just took a couple steps back and started spraying, and I just gave a blast of bear spray right in her face, and immediately she just came right through it. Her momentum of that speed just carried her through the bear spray.
All that weight just coming down.
And it just took only, a couple seconds, and she was right there on me. And I just turned and went down on my face with my hands behind the back of my neck. And she pretty much knocked me down, and the bear spray, didn't affect her immediately, but it took with like 3 or 4 seconds, and she started coughing. But she was able to bite me 4 or 5 times on my right arm and my shoulder, and then she started making this coughing sound and took off. Just that quick, she was gone. I didn't know where she was. I picked myself up and like, wow, I got some puncture wounds on my arm. But
do you remember it ever slowing down at any point? Like I had another guy on the podcast that was attacked by a bear in Afognak, and he talked about a flow state. Having the ability to move, but his mind was slowed down to a point where it's 2 or 3 seconds, but he can remember every every motion, every little thing that happened. You feel that at all?
In the second attack, that did. But the first attack, it just happened so quickly that it was just like, boom, bite, it's over, she's gone. That quick.
Yeah, you didn't have time to kind of feel the crunching or
no, it just happened so fast. It was just done. I'm just a surprise, and all of a sudden it's over. So I picked myself up, and I'm like, oh, wow, that was crazy. Just got attacked by a grizzly bear, and I'm alive. That's good. Bear spray worked. Just took a couple seconds, And I looked down. I got some puncture wounds, and I'm bleeding. I'm like, all right, nothing's broke. I'm just going to head down to the hospital and get some stitches. It's kind of a crazy morning all of a sudden.
Did you think about what her intent was at that point? Like, was she just giving you a warning shot, or she just...
Well, it just, most bears will... they'll stop and check you out and see what you are, or bluff charge, or stand up, snap their jaws or something, or maybe blow by you, but they rarely actually attack you. And so I thought it was kind of rare. She was more aggressive than most bears have seen, most bear behavior. And apparently I was just too close to her. I was a threat to her cubs.
Yeah. Yeah, which
and
is a classic.
Even though it was 100 yards from her cubs at least, still, I was still a threat. And she went downwind of me, got my wind, and decided, that's it, I'm getting him. So it was pretty rare, I think, for a bear to come in that quick and not even hesitate. But I just picked myself up and said, all right, got to head down the trail and go down and get some stitches. And I thought that was the end of it.
Yeah. Do you remember immediate pain, or was there a pragmatic nature? Because I've, again, talked to other folks who have been attacked by bears, and it always seems like I got to this point, then I went to this point, then I went to this point, a very formulaic way to approach after the fact.
Yeah, well, the first bite, I remember that first bite, the excruciating pain, it was right in my shoulder, I think, the first bite. So I remember that. And then, like I said, that first attack was so quick that it was just 4 or 5 bites in just like 3 seconds, and then it was over. And so all of a sudden you're like, wow, okay, yeah, that hurts. You big 1.5-inch canine buried into your arm muscle, you definitely feel it.
Yeah,
so,
it doesn't feel good.
But your adrenaline's going too, so you're kind of like, wow, that's crazy, and you're not really thinking about the pain. You're just making sure you're not going to bleed out, and then got to head to the hospital and get some stitches and call it a day,
Get it
so
going.
I thought it was all over.
Yeah, okay. And then you got going to the truck, and then
so about 5 minutes down the trail, and the trail kind of goes right crosses the creek there. And so I'm a few hundred yards down the trail, and I can't really hear too much because of the water in the creek there. And all of a sudden, something just got my attention, a little noise or something. I turned, and here she was right behind me, 10 feet at this time, coming wide open again. And I've got bear spray in my hand, and there wasn't even time to do anything. It was like I caught her out of the corner of my eye, and boom, I'm knocked down on my face right in the rocks by the creek. And immediately she is on top of me, and this time she's really mad. And her first bite was in my left forearm. I had my hands up behind my head, again protecting the back of my neck. And the first bite was in my left forearm, and it ripped 2 of the tendons out and broke my arm, all in the bone of my arm, and just crushed it right there. And I remember the immediate pain and just the feeling and the sound of that. And I winced. I kind of went, and pulled my arm away. And that motion and that sound just triggered like a frenzy. And she just grabbed a hold of me, picked me up, and she was shaking me. She'd slammed me down. She bit me 20, 25 times in my right arm and my shoulder. At one point, she bit me in the side, and it kind of turned me. And I remember just seeing her head like a foot from mine, looking right in her eye. And I'm just like, no, pull it back in. And I just used every bit of strength that I had to hold that face down position, protecting the sides of my face and my eyes and my vitals, and trying not to let her flip me over.
Yeah. Are there any real visceral memories, like the smell of her breath or the feeling of her claws, or is there anything?
Yeah, this attack, I remember the pain of that first bite, and then your adrenaline kicks in, and it's that will to survive. And I don't remember any more pain after that, but it's like all the other senses are heightened. It's like I can remember how bad she stunk, just the smell of rotten death that whatever she'd been eating or rolling in, And then just I could hear, every bite, you could hear the crunch of that big canine bearing into your arm muscle. It's like, you hear this crunching sound, you smell her. I can feel her like breathing on the back of my neck. And that was probably the eeriest part, was just hearing and breathing the sound and the feeling that breath on the back of my neck, just inches from my spine. And I'm just like, one bite in there and that's over. I could be paralyzed or bleed out or whatever. So I just kept telling myself, don't move. She's going to leave. She's going to go check on her cubs. You just got to ride this out. And that was my whole focus. I told myself that 100 times in my head. It was like, don't move. She's going to leave. Just hold it down. And at one point, I remember a claw caught the side of my scalp, and that's what ripped that big 5-inch gash, and my scalp was hanging over, my eyes filled with blood, so I can't see anything. Just a crazy situation. Just she picking me up, slamming me into the dirt, my face into the dirt, just shaking me like a rag doll. I was just helpless.
And as helpless is something I think that when you listen to accounts of attacks of this nature, there's nothing but helplessness. I mean, I think when all of us think, oh, a bear's going to attack me, I've got my bear spray, I've got my pistol, I've got my wits. But in most cases, and in a lot of cases, especially yours, that you are helpless and all you can do is lay there. And what interests me the most is as you're laying there, the thought process that you have. Because you're not immediately like, I'm going to die, I'm dead, I'm going to die. You're thinking through, okay, if this bite lands here, if this happens, what's the next move? What's the next result?
Yeah, well, you're talking about an animal that can, kill an elk with one bite, or a swat, or bison, whatever. They're just a killing machine. And so I have absolutely no chance to fight back against this thing, to a grizzly bear, especially a big grizzly bear. So I knew my only thing I could do was to just play dead and hope she would leave. I couldn't fight back. I thought about trying to get to my pistol, but I didn't want to get flipped over on my back and then have her rip my face open or my throat or something. But I think it's, one of the things that will to survive, and knowing that there's nothing you can do. And so, I had people ask me, it's like, oh, did you see your life flash before your eyes? And when I first started doing interviews, everybody asked that. I'm like, yeah, I thought I was going to die. But then I got to thinking about it, more recently. It's like, I don't think that ever crossed my mind that I was going to die, because you're in that survival mode. You're not in the dying mode. You're like, what do I do to live? How do I live? I got to get through this. I don't want to die. You don't give up. You never seem to, people don't give up when it comes to something like that. You keep fighting back somehow.
Yeah, I always think that. I think... And again, it's cool to hear you say that, because I've heard it from other folks in similar situations. You think about your death after, like when it's calmed down, and you're able to then reflect on how close you came.
Right.
But during it, I think it's important for people to know. I think it's important to have these conversations so people can hear these, because if it happens to you, you have to have some perspective that it is always about survival, and that's your survival instincts are real and they do kick in. And that fear and that angst about death doesn't have time to kind of poke its way into your thoughts.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and the more you think about your situation prior to like the attack, having, practiced my bear spray, having thought about, okay, what happens today if I run into a bear? What am I going to do? And the more you think about that and are more aware of, bear behavior and bear safety, then if that situation does happen, it's muscle memory. You just automatically, you do something. I didn't think about pulling my bear spray. I automatically pulled my bear spray because I'd practiced it 500 times. I didn't think about, okay, go down and protect the back of your neck. I just did it. All of a sudden, I'm curled up in a ball, face down, playing dead. And it's like that didn't have to go through my head. It just happened because I'd thought about it before. I'd practiced that. I knew what I needed to do to survive the situation. Yeah. And so I think that's important to tell people is like, you can't just go buy bear spray off the shelf and then go out there and start hiking and all of a sudden a bear charges you and expect to do everything right. You're probably going to panic, scream, and run otherwise, or fall down on,
or throw the bear spray at
something, or forget you have it on you. It's like you have to practice those things so it becomes a muscle memory and becomes instinctive, and you do it, and that's how you're going to survive.
Yeah, I feel strongly. I mean, it's a very practical thought process. Survival nowadays, if you read the books and watch the TV shows, has become about survival skills, like being able to start a fire with a bow and a stick. To me, it's less that. It's like, how do you think about where you are and what you're doing, and how your thought processes lead to to being prepared when something like this does happen. So it sounds to me like you had done that work.
I think spending my life in the outdoors, ever since a kid in Montana and bear country, and I'd seen bears as a kid and talking about it with my dad and my parents out camping and knowing what to do and what not to do. And then almost 30 years with the Forest Service, and I've taken bear awareness and bear safety classes and bear identification classes. I've carried the bear spray. I've known what to do. And I think that makes a difference for sure. And you can't just plan to go out there without any knowledge or any practice and succeed at something in that situation.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get back to, the bear is mauling you.
Okay.
Like there's a quote. Let's go back to that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll go back to that, Ben. That's great.
Yeah. So
there's a quote that I read that you said the weirdest moment of the whole thing was feeling her claws on my lower back, all her weight on me. She was panting and sniffing the back of my neck. So what happened after that?
Yeah, so she's got me pinned to the ground. I got little scars right below my belt line where she had me just all her weight on top of me, and I can barely breathe, but I'm trying not to make any noise. So I'm trying to breathe quietly when in this crazy situation so she doesn't keep chewing on me. And she'd sniff the back of my neck, and then she'd like bite my shoulder, and then she'd stop and she'd sniff again, and then she'd bite. And it was more of like those last few seconds, it was her like nipping on me. It was more like testing to see if I was incapacitated, if the threat was over, if I was dead. So instead of like just trash me around, it's just checking me. And it was like I had all these like bruises that were in like marks that were like dog bites or something.
Yeah,
It didn't
just
quite
put the pressure of her jaw on.
Yeah, just pressure and just testing me. And she did that a dozen times probably. And then she just stopped and she was just standing there, and it was like dead quiet. I'll remember that. It was like so quiet, nothing. I'm like, I could feel her weight, but she's not even breathing, nothing. I'm just like trying not to breathe myself. And I think she was probably just looking around to see if there was any other threat or where her cubs might be and checking the situation out. And then all of a sudden she just stepped off of me. And I remember just that, I can take a deep breath again. And she stepped off and disappeared. And so I just held that position for like 30 seconds. I'm like not moving. Okay, is she 10 feet away? Is she going to bite me again? I'm just waiting for that attack again or that bite, and nothing, no sound. And I'm like, okay, maybe she's gone. But if I, make a movement or something like that, and she's right there watching me, I'm going to get attacked again. So I just held the position, and I got to thinking, if she goes back and checks on her cubs and they're still up a tree or wherever she put them, and then she's like, okay, let's come back and see if the threat's still here, and I'm still there, she's going to attack me again because I'm still a threat to her. So I decided I got to protect myself. I got to get out of here. I got to do something. So I really slowly pulled my arm down I had my arms behind my head still, pulled one arm down and reached under from my pistol that I had in a shoulder holster. And I remember reaching in there, and it was like, where is it? It's gone. I can't find it. So I'm like, okay, relax, Todd. Just reach for your pistol. It's right there under your armpit, And so I reached again and realized it had been ripped off during the attack. And so I don't know where the pistol is. My bear spray's gone. I can't see anything. I'm completely helpless. So I really slowly reached up and kind of wiped some blood from my eyes and looked each direction kind of under my arm. And I didn't see her anywhere, but my pistol was laying over there about 10 or 15 feet away. And I just dove for the pistol and pulled it out of the holster, hammer back, like, okay, I'm ready now. And she was gone. She wasn't there anywhere. So I'm like, okay, I got to get out of here. I need to put distance between her and I. And my left arm, broken arm with tendons sticking out. My wrist is all curled under, and it's just useless. So I tucked the pistol under my armpit right here where I could grab it easily, picked up the bear spray in this hand and just kind of with this arm against my side and just took off down the trail and just said, okay, I got to get distance down there. And so I went.
How far did you have to get to safety?
It was about 3.5 miles, like an hour hike out of there. Yeah, and it's a rough trail down the canyon, across the creek a couple times, and it's bear country. So, it's like you could run into another bear at 8 o'clock in the morning on the way out. And I was thinking about that, going, oh, geez, this is be terrible.
Yeah, the smell of blood.
A third time. So after like 15 minutes of hiking, I'm down the trail like a mile or something. And then I'm starting to calm down, going, okay, she's not going to attack me again. She's way back up there with her cubs. I got nothing to worry about. So I stopped and just checked my wounds and, to see if I need some, bandaging or tourniquet or something. How bad am I bleeding? I didn't want to, bleed out on the way to the truck kind of thing. And so I got to thinking about that now that I'm calmed down a little bit and everything. I still had blood dripping off my elbows and soaking through my shirt and into my pants, but I could tell there was no severed arteries. I'm not going to bleed to death. And I'm like, okay, just keep going. Get to the truck, and then you can do some first aid.
So you were trying to traveling and assessing at the same time?
I was, yeah. I would be hiking, and I'd kind of stop, kind of look down at my elbows, my arms, and just make sure there was nothing, no guts hanging out, anything like that. So I'm okay. And I'd stopped, I think, twice on the way down, and it took me about an hour to hike out of there. And when I finally got to the truck at the end there, and right to the trailhead, and it was just like a relief, like, okay, I made it to the truck. I'm not in shock. I'm not bleeding out. I didn't get attacked again. There's no bears or mountain lions waiting for me down here. I'm good to go. I'm going to make it. I'm going to survive this.
How much of that hour do you remember? Like, what was going through your head during that time? Was it still very pragmatic, or had it kind of scattered a bit, your thoughts?
I think it was still, I'm trying to think back at it. I remember constantly thinking about what was going on around me. Like watching behind me, watching up on the hill just to make sure I wouldn't run in. Like I said, there could have been another bear. And it's like, if there is another bear, I got to make sure I avoid it because there's no way I can fight back at this point or protect myself. Can't hardly hold a pistol or anything, and this arm is useless. So I remember watching that constantly around me as I'm hiking out. And then at the same time, kind of assessing the wounds as I'm going. And beyond that, it was more of just like over and over in my head, like, you're almost there. You're almost there. You're almost to the truck. It's everything's good to go. You're going to make it. You're going to survive this. And wasn't really thinking about what I was going to do when I got there. I just knew I had to get to the truck and get to the hospital.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if there's any time in your life you know what you have to do, it would be that time. I got to get in my truck and go.
I wasn't looking for elk or anything at that point. I wasn't scouting out any elk or anything.
That would have been the shits of it if you saw like a big bull on the ridge.
Geez, I really want to get a photo of him, but I can't hold the camera, so we'll skip that today.
That would have been if you said, well, I stopped to glass I saw a bull, I stopped at glass. No,
didn't go that far.
When you get back to the truck and you know you're in safety, other attack survivors I've talked to, they talk about, either I've heard it a couple different ways. I've heard like the shakiness of the adrenaline and kind of the feeling of the jitteriness. And then I've heard like the intense calm and like the stiffening of posture and like the forcible, I will live through this. This is not it for me. Like,
right.
Where were you in that?
Well, it'd been like an hour since the attack, and I've had all this time to think about it and what just happened, and running it through my head, and then just the relief of getting to the truck and getting to the trailhead, out of the canyon, to safety. And I think that a lot of the adrenaline had wore off by then, and I was feeling a lot of pain. My left arm was just excruciating pain, like it was in a vice from the tendon sticking out and the broken, all the nerve damage, a lot of nerve damage. And so I felt pretty calm. I didn't feel like I was in shock or had that adrenaline rush anymore. It was just like, okay, I survived this. Plan B or next step is to get to the hospital, and really I wasn't nervous anymore. I don't know. I probably could have joked about it at that point. If there was someone else there, I could have been like, "How do I look?"
Handsome.
It's a bad hair day, But because I felt so relieved that I was okay. I survived this. I'm out of. It's not over. I've got a lot of rehab to do, but the life-threatening situation is over, and that was just a complete relief.
During the whole, from the time of the attack until you get back to your truck, were there any, people that kept popping into your head, voices or experiences? Were there any things that you called back to, during, I guess, what I would imagine would be a lot of terror and just a lot of, craziness? Were there things that you called back to in your life or people that you thought about?
I don't really think there was much at that point. It was more of, everything, my whole focus that entire time was on that survival mode. And it's like, people had asked me, it's like, did, your life flash before your eyes and you remember these people and, that in your life and wish you had said something or all that. But that, like, I told you, that never happened because you're in survival mode. You're not thinking you're dead at this point. You're like, you're still going to make it somehow. Yeah. So it was all about just getting to safety, and then like, okay, I got to get to the hospital. I knew I had to call my girlfriend and let her know what was going on. That was going to be something, and let my parents know. My parents were on vacation, so I'm like, well, I'm not going to bother them until after the whole day of surgery and getting stitched up, and then I'll give them a call.
Yeah.
But I did, on my drive out, I did call my girlfriend and just say, it was like 8:30 in the morning now. And so she answers the phone. It's kind of funny. She answers the phone like, oh, hi. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? She's like, oh, I just getting ready to go have coffee with her girlfriend. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, well, why are you calling me? I thought you were going to be up on top of the mountain all day. And I'm like, well, I had a little situation. And so then I told her I got attacked by a bear. And she was in nursing school, so I knew she was going to have a lot of questions. And so I'm like, I've got a broken arm. I've got tendons or something sticking out of my arm. I've got a big cut on my head, but I'm not bleeding to death. And I'm driving myself to the hospital. And so she had a couple more questions. And then I said, all right, if you can meet me at the hospital with some clean clothes, and we'll see you in an hour or so. And other than that, I just was like heading to the hospital. That was my focus.
Going. And then when you get to the hospital, like you said, you kind of list out all your injuries. I read that the doctor spent 8 hours stitching up 26 inches of different, parts of your body.
Right. Well, I was driving to the hospital, and on the way down to the hospital, I ran into a rancher that was getting into his mailbox that morning, and I kind of flagged him over, and he saw the blood all over me. I told him I was attacked by a bear. And I said, hey, can you call the hospital and just give them heads up that I'm coming in so I don't walk in looking like this and surprise everybody. And he had asked if I needed a ride. And I said, no, I already got a mess in my, bloody mess in my own truck. I don't want to make a mess of yours too. And so I went ahead and drove myself in. And when I got to the hospital, about 30 minutes later, I pulled into the emergency entrance there, and there was a sheriff and a doctor and a nurse all standing out there waiting for me. They'd got the word. And so I pulled up there and tried to put my truck into park, but at this time, it's almost 2 hours or an hour and a half since my attack, and I can't hardly lift my arms. All these wounds are really starting to cramp up, and I'm just kind of immobile. And I did have enough strength in my arm because of a big tear in my right shoulder. I couldn't even lift the truck or put the truck into park. So I kind of motioned at the sheriff, and he came over and got the truck in park for me. And then I couldn't get the seatbelt off, so he had to help me get the seatbelt off. And I remember he was like, "I'm surprised you took time to buckle up." And I was like,
"Safety first."
I just survived 2 bear attacks. I didn't want to die in a car wreck on the way to the hospital after all of that. So a little extra precaution there. But anyway, so they got me. I walked into the hospital, and I remember everybody that was in the hospital heard about it now. So all the nurses and even I think some of the patients were all kind of lined up along the main hallway on each side. So I kind of had like this parade of people
your first
watching
evidence
me.
That this might be
it's
a
like,
viral.
I want to see what this looks like, So we'll go in there, and then they did x-rays. Everywhere I'd been bit, they took x-rays to see what other broken bones I had. Just had the one in my ulna bone in my arm. And then about 7 or 8 hours with a doctor on each side just putting stitches in, and all the puncture wounds were really deep, so they'd put a stitch down like halfway in to make sure it was closed, and then a stitch at the top. And then took quite a bit of time on my head to make sure they stitched that really well. I don't remember how many stitches, but I think it was like 26 centimeters of stitching they put in total on my arm and my head.
Wow.
And then my left arm, where I had the tendon sticking out, I remember the doctor, he was like, "Well, I think those are tendons or something. You're going to have to see an orthopedic surgeon."
"Sir, I would wish you be more specific."
Yeah.
"I think those are tendons or something."
He's like, "I think you're going to have to see an orthopedic surgeon." I'm like, "All right." But he's like, "I'll just kind of get that stitch back over and closed up for now, to stop the bleeding." So I remember him trying to push the tendons back in my arm, and they're kind of rigid, so they're sticking out, and he'd push them in and try to stitch it, and they'd pop back out, and he was having a heck of a time, but finally got me all closed up and sent me home that night.
Yeah.
And it was the next day, then I had to go into the orthopedic surgeon, and they spent about, I think, like 4 hours doing a bunch of kind of exploratory surgery. They had to reopen all the wounds that the day before had stitched up and clean everything out and look to see what kind of nerve damage or tendon damage. And I remember sitting in there, and I wanted to watch it all. He's like, "Well, if we give you some drugs or whatever." I'm like, "Just do the local in my arm."
"Oh, you're
I
better
want to
than
watch
me.
the
You're
whole
better
thing."
than me."
So
I'd be like, "Put me out."
I had the big screen TV right there above my head, and I'm watching the whole thing, and he's like, "Okay, this is your ulna bone." He'd tap on it, and I could feel like the vibration in my shoulder.
Man.
And he's like, "Okay, this is the tendons that are ripped out." And then I'd be like, "I can't quite see it." And he'd lift up the curtain there a little bit so I could look right down at my arm.
I can't. Todd, you're a badass.
look right into my arm there. I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." So anyway, he'd had to figure out how to attach the 2 tendons again, because one was for my wrist and one for these 2 fingers. And so he would sit there and find something to get my fingers to move, and then finally stitch that in there and just get everything back to where it would work for me. And took 4 or 5 hours and put me back together.
Boy, I'd have been out.
Sent me home.
I'd have been like, "Put me out." I don't want to know nothing about that.
No, I didn't want any kind of medication at all. I wanted to be totally 100% so I could watch the whole thing. And
well done. Yeah. Well done. And so, at this point in the story, everything's okay. Like, like as okay as it can be in this situation. You feel like you're going to mend. The doctors are saying you're going to recover.
Yep.
No real long-lasting effects other than the memories of the attack.
Yeah, the tendons were kind of questionable. The muscle in my forearm was ripped in like 3 different pieces, and so he kind of stitched all the muscle back together and reattached the tendons. But it was like hamburger in there, and it just ripped up so bad he was having a hard time getting a good solid point of attachment. So they gave me a brace to put on my arm that would keep my wrist turned back up and my fingers up, just so I wouldn't put any pressure and tear that out until it healed well. So I had to wear that brace 24/7 for 6 weeks. And just till we had a good, sure that everything was good and solid in there. And then a lot of rehab. I had like 3 or 4 months of 3 or 4 days a week of rehab, just every day going in there, trying to get motion back in my hand and my wrists and fingers to work and be able to move them and all different, separately, independently, moving my fingers and grabbing things and picking things up. And it was a slow process to get all that to come back. Just the amount of nerve damage, and I still don't have any feeling in my forearm here. It's all numb. And then right up here where my arm was broke, when I touch right there, I can feel it down in my fingertip. So it's really weird just from the nerve damage still. But everything's working pretty good. I mean, it's a little slower. I can't quite open my hand all the way. I don't have all the strength there. I've got a pretty good hole in my arm where the muscle was just shredded that just never healed up well. There's just no muscle there anymore. And so it's not 100%, but I'm doing most everything I need to do, and I don't even think about it anymore.
What about the grizzly? Like what happened to her? The
Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Fish and Game, and the Grizzly Interagency, grizzly bear study team went back in, I believe, the next day on horses. And as far as I know, they did not see her at all. And so she's probably still out there. And I think about that every time I go back in the woods in that country. It's like, is she going to, bears have the best sense of smell of any of the animals out there. So if she's a couple miles on the other side of the canyon or up the canyon, and the wind's carrying up there and she smells me, she's going to recognize that just as if I was there because her sense of smell is so good. So I was wondering, it's like, that means she's going to come back to finish me off, memory, or is she like, I don't want to have anything to do with him, he didn't taste good, and she's going to go the other way. But I always think about that. So as far as I know, she's probably still out there. Yep.
And did you ever think about her age or her weight or her size? How much do you recollect to be able to
it's hard
predict?
To say when that's such a quick situation, but she was definitely a full-size bear, and a female grizzly might weigh up to 400 pounds, 300 to 400 pounds for a big bear. So she was definitely big, and I remember she was just crushing me when she was on top of me, that weight. Wow. And just, I was a rag doll, picking me up and would literally just shake me back and forth and then let go. And I would roll 10 feet and then I just roll back face down again, protecting myself. And so I was just a rag doll. I was helpless.
Unbelievable. And I think I know the answer to this because it almost always is the same. You have no resentment towards the animal or grizzly bears in general.
She was protecting her cubs, and in that situation, I think she was a little overprotective because they were 100 yards away, and she actually left them and circled around to get my wind, and then came in. But every bear's different. Some bear could tolerate you at 50 feet, some won't tolerate you at 100 yards, I guess. So she was more aggressive than any other bears I've been around. I probably see a dozen bears every year, a couple grizzly and a lot of black bear, and usually they're going the other direction. They might run away or they walk away, like whatever. It's just another person. I don't care, And she was definitely more aggressive and a little bit different, but I don't blame her for what she did. I don't want to go out and get revenge on her or something. And, I do believe there should be some, grizzly bear management. There's a lot more grizzlies out there than there used to be, and a lot more people in the woods. And I think we need to manage that population. If they do go through with that and put out, licenses, I have no desire to go shoot one. I can't afford it. Plus, I don't really care. It's not a big deal. I don't need revenge, and I don't need a grizzly bear.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
All right, so that was Todd Orr. Thanks to Todd for coming in and sharing his story. That was one of the more popular episodes from the new format at THC way back in April of 2019, back in the annals of time, way back. What would now be about 8 months ago. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable.
The dark ages.
Yeah, it's unbelievable it lasted that long. Back then it was just me and a mic. There was no studio. In fact, we did that one in just the conference room across the hall here. It was definitely before Phil.
It's a large echoey room.
Perfect for podcasts. I was just running like a little Zoom recorder. I think the coffee might have been too hot and burned Mr. Orr's lip. It was a disaster back then. But now we got a nice fresh studio, and we got Phil the engineer. We're doing just fine. Just fine.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/meateater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/meateater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
So we're going to get to the next one. Now, I will tell you this next podcast is the most listened to, most downloaded podcast in the history of the Hunting Collective.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we recorded it yet a year ago. I went down to San Diego. A whale's vagina.
Yep. I was going to ask you if you knew what that translated to.
Yes, I believe roughly. Saint Diego.
Yes.
I believe it's just Saint Diego. So we went down there. I met up with a guy named Brad Jameson. Now, Brad is a resident of Afognak Island, Alaska. I would say that we, here at the Hunting Collective, broke the story, and it was a pretty harrowing one. This is one where this guy's definitely dead if his friends aren't there to save him. In a pretty dramatic fashion. And I think what came out of it was, of course, that some of his injuries were particularly notable. We've talked about that a little bit already.
The container.
The container.
Yeah.
Some the bits came out of the container, but they were put back in eventually. So I think that's certainly, it's a compelling story. It had me cringing. It had me making noises. It had me roll around the ground. But you'll hear again, just like Todd, you'll hear that Brad approaches this story fairly reasonably and pragmatically. He doesn't over sensationalize anything. He's not trying to spin a yarn. He's just telling you the blow by blow and what happened, why it happened, how it happened, and how he got out alive. And you definitely hear it in his voice, and that's what I enjoyed about hanging out with Brad, is that we had lunch after the podcast, talked more about the attack. It was just something that happened to him in his life. He didn't want to be famous from it. He didn't want anything from it. He just wanted to get back up to Kodiak and go hunting again. And so, as you'll hear, even if you listen to the Meat Eater podcast, the Meat Tree, the bear attack from Afognak, the same place where Brad was attacked, those guys talked about how it changed their life and how they view their children. And Brad didn't think about it that way, at least to my mind. He looked at it as something that happened, something he needed to get over and move forward from, which I definitely appreciate, because his attack was traumatic as traumatic can be. So I've talked to Brad recently. He's all healed up. He's back hunting and doing quite well. So enjoy Brad Jameson, the bear attack on Afognak Island.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
The boys and I decided to go for an elk hunt, and we took a boat over actually, and got to our kind of hunting spot where we did last year.
How long of a boat ride is that?
I'd say like an hour and a half.
So it's not long.
No, it's not bad at all. Not from the main Dog Harbor area in Kodiak, depending where you launch from, but that's probably where most people launch from anyways, Dog Harbor. And it just kind of depends on, of course, the sea state and the tides, because there's some passes that you can take to get there that you can get through. Otherwise, you got to go all the way around. That'll take a lot longer. But I think about an hour and a half is what it was.
And as a resident, is it pretty easy to grab a tag to go over there? Or?
Yeah. No. The registration hunt opens all on the kind of, for lack of a better term, I guess, quota on how the draw hunts go. So the elk is really, really highly regulated, and it was, 2 seasons prior to this one where none of us actually got to go. We were trying to make it work and get everybody organized, and they shut it down. So the way it works is the draw hunts all happen, and then I guess some years they might not even open it, but they'll open it on the same date. I don't remember what it was this year. I think it's November 23rd or something like that. That sounds about right, maybe. Or no, October. It would be October 23rd. Yeah, it had to be. So October 23rd, I think, is when it opens for the public, and you just go pick up your tag. It's free, and every day you get a call in, find out if it's still open, and then as soon as you do get one, you're required to call it in, I think, within 48 hours, really the same day is optimally what you want to do, just to let them know what the population is, and then whatever quota they set, Fish and Game does, then it's like closed down. And unlike most other hunts, you have like 5 days. It's like, okay, 5 days, call in. But it's like the elk is very, very strict, and because it's all herds there, and I don't even know where I was going with that. But yeah, October 23rd, and we kind of switched out with some other guys on this hunt and sent some other guys over there first, and then we swapped out with them, and they didn't have any luck whatsoever. Yeah. And as you well know, and I know Steve has some good experience over there. I've seen some of the shows and podcasts as well, but the weather is just as crazy over there, even probably more so, I think. Because there is no roads, no really well-taken paths or trails. Like, if you're going to find something, your goal is to kind of get up to ridgeline, and then hopefully you can see. But if the cloud cover is low enough, you're not going to be able to see anything. Yeah. Like, you just can't get anywhere. And obviously, come to find out, it's like the bear population there is well aware of elk and the people there, and they're not city bears. They're very... well versed in being the primal creature over there.
Did you, like, when going into this particular hunt? I mean, you've hunted it before, obviously, and going into this hunt, what's your mindset? This would be a lot of questions in one, but had you had any bear experiences on Afognak prior, and going into this hunt, what was your preparation as far as communication with the mainland, and medical supplies and protection from bears? I mean, I know that's informed by just your general knowledge of wilderness and wilderness medicine and what you've done in the past, but that's also informed by what you've seen over there. Sure, you've been there. And so yeah, me and the boys, it's always standard for us. Every time we're going out, we're bringing a sat phone. We always have a sat phone with us. And at least one guy's had that. We actually had multiple DeLorme inReaches with us. Yeah, those are fantastic. Funny enough, I've got a good story on that when we get to it, in comparison, I guess. But and then guys have GPSs and cell phones as well that we use for GPSs. All of us pretty much use the Gaia app on our cell phones. It's great, but no, those are kind of our primary electronic devices that we'll use. And then we always have a first aid kit that everybody has pretty much standard with them, as well as tourniquets. And then every guy's got one of those. And then everybody's carrying with them. Some guys will have a little bit more or less, depending. But everybody's got one of those. The DeLorme inReaches, I think we had at least 2. And then at least a plethora of rifles, and pistols, combos thereof. So I think we pretty much covered our bases. And to be honest, when this all went down, I still think it went down textbook. Couldn't have went any better under the circumstances. And never had any bear experiences over there before. And honestly, before that, had never even seen. I was going to say bear. That was my question. You've never seen a bear. Yeah, I was kind of surprised, even us. So the year prior to when we did the elk hunt, we kind of came up with this system. We did it all in one go and got the elk, skun them, brought all the meat away from the carcasses, and then built kind of a new site with a fire at it. And our theory is just, having the fire hopefully keep the bear away, or at least kind of deter them for a little while. And then we just kind of did this shuffling, short movements. We just go a few hundred yards, make another fire,
bring the meat over there, and then just cart back and forth, and then just basically go fire to fire to fire to fire until we got back to the boats on the beach. And system really, really worked good. Never saw any bear. The only thing we saw at that point was foxes. The foxes obviously really, he's like, ooh, meat, you know.
They seem to always come around.
For sure.
On these islands.
Oh, for sure. We'd done a buffalo hunt. I think first year I was there, down towards the south end of the island. And that was the first thing that I saw pop up. As soon as a buffalo went down, like that gray fox came like right up to me, didn't care at all. He was just like, hey, what's up? And it was like just nose in the air, like looking. He's like, oh, I smell meat. And he was ready to go. But it never really came up before. But that's another thing I think with the wildlife in Kodiak is there's no real predators.
Yeah.
I think like other places, the bear, as much as I know that they can take down like deer, elk, and buffalo, it's not really a normal occurrence. They rely on, berries and twigs if they're inland, or if that's what they're going for, and then mainly the salmon, of course, and that's always their main food consumption. So I think they'll take carcasses and stuff like that when it's there and ready, and especially the more hungry they are. But I don't know. I think just probably a waste of energy for them, so they don't actually try taking them down. More scavengers. But yeah, no predators there. But anyway, back to the Afognak, and
I would say like to make your point a little bit, you go to Kodiak Island and look at how many black-tailed deer there are. There's no way that predation is that strong. If you look across, the predation numbers can't be that high because there are deer everywhere. Well, I have to go on a tangent on this one now, but specifically with the deer, this year was great. Phenomenal, fantastic deer everywhere. The deer look really, really healthy, a lot of fat on them. Yeah. Both mine and the other guys that I work with killed like really, really good, healthy deer, which is really great to see because the year prior was horrendous. Yeah. Almost nobody got deer, very, very scarce. And the reasoning for that, in my hypothesis and other guys that I've talked to, is all because of an early freeze. Yeah, winter kill. And it just killed off all of the salmon berries. There was no salmon berries like on island at all. There was no season because a lot of people go out and harvest and pick them and make stuff with them, pies and juices and whatever else. And completely killed them off, and therefore I think the deer population really hurt. Not probably just because of the salmon berries, but other things that frost could have killed as well. Just hurt the population so much, but the deer just thrive there. And from what I've been told, is like the entire population of deer on Kodiak started with like 7 deer on a separate island, on Long Island, just off the coast there, and I think some down in the south end as well. And they just dropped them off, and the deer from Long Island, they swam over, and the ones at the south end, like they all just like populated, just like blew up. Yeah, completely just thrived there. Hardy creatures. Yeah, with the harsh conditions, but of course with no predators, that's what takes them down. It's the harsh conditions and the weather, and inevitably that's so. But it's not like they're dealing with coyotes and wolves and other predators to take them down. Yeah, I mean with generally low predation numbers, and winter kill being winter kill and predation being and habitat loss kind of being the 3 things that normally will drive population numbers down. There's not a whole lot of any of those things other than winter kill going on. No, not at all. But that's, I could tell you just
scratch the surface.
Yeah, I mean the one time that I hunted black-tailed deer in Kodiak, I mean you could look across the flats, look across the hummock flats, and it would be 200 deer in one. I mean, I have photos of 200 deer standing in one flat.
Jeez,
over there.
That's wild.
I'm sworn to secrecy. Can't tell you where.
That's quite all right. I get it. I totally get that.
But that's that's my experience on one small part of the island. But it for sure is in that harsh environment to see those animals thrive like that. That's was always amazing to me.
Yeah. No, they're, like you said, hardy animals.
Back to Afognak.
Yeah, another tangent there.
All good tangents.
Yeah.
That's what podcasts are about. They're all about tangents. So you had quite the system for getting your meat out, and never had any bear experiences to this point, but still very prepared. I mean, you guys are all carrying sidearms, correct?
Not everybody. Some guys had sidearms, and some guys had rifles, and then some guys didn't have anything at the point. Just kind of like, because of the situation when we did go for the elk, things had kind of changed over the course of time. At first, everybody had a rifle on them.
Yeah.
But our goal had changed. Like, okay, we're only getting one elk. And that was really the deal. It's like, okay, we're only getting one elk this time. It's like, just bring it out. Because kind of setting up for that, the guys prior hadn't seen anything. The conditions were just horrible.
Yeah.
They were just god-awful. Like, it was really, really high winds, heavy rains, cold. And we just wanted to focus on getting on one.
Normal conditions.
Right, yeah, normal conditions there. And even the cloud cover was low a lot of the times, and of course affected visibility. So first we were gung-ho, and I think we were there for 2 days and hadn't seen anything. We didn't even see any deer. Like, we're just talking about the deer population. Didn't see any deer, didn't see any elk, didn't see any bear, didn't see anything. No foxes. Like, I didn't see anything living practically on that island.
Not a ptarmigan.
And it's like, you got to be kidding me. It's like nothing. And we're like, okay, that was a little disheartening. And the other guys were the same way. And like, okay, well, it's a relatively big island when you're on foot and having to work.
Yeah.
Like you've mentioned before, it's like it takes you hours to go anywhere. So you got to kind of set yourself up, and not knowing where the actual like population of elk is like can really hurt you.
Yeah. Did you guys bring any like bear fencing, or when you camped every night, or did you just?
Nope. Just camping. Yep. Just asses out and hope nothing bad happens. Talk about that a lot because we spent a lot of days out in the field, like sleeping overnight, and spent a lot of nights out in the field in a bivvy, and just this small like rainproof sack, and just call it a bear burrito because it's gonna be a bad day if that bear decides that you smell really good and decides to take you.
He's gonna rip that burrito open.
Yep, exactly. And nope, that's all we had is just our shelters, and we were down more towards the coast, and because of the numbers, we've never really had issues before. It's as soon as you have the meat and all that, I think that's when it changes everything.
They're willing to inch a little bit further in because of the reward rather than, how many guys you have in your hunting
Five, including myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, with five
total.
People, that's a good deterrent for a bear, but when there's the encouragement to come and check that meat out, it's probably a little bit more.
I think I don't know. People have different theories and their own stories on. I think fire always helps too. So it's like when you have a base camp, having that fire, it's kind of like, okay, I don't know. If you're cooking something, that's going to change stuff. But as soon as you have a fire and the smoke, I would think that, the bears don't really like that. But then again, maybe they do. There's some theories on the gunshots in Kodiak being like dinner bells.
Dinner bells.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
You hear that all the time. And it's like, okay, that's the time that you have to be most aware, like bear aware, as they say, because it's like as soon as that happens, like you're just waiting.
Yeah. Did you guys ever consider bear spray as something you would do? Would you do?
Yeah, and I know a lot of guys use it. I'm not a huge proponent of it. I still prefer a sidearm if I'm gonna carry something and not carry a full rifle. Otherwise, I always try to carry a full rifle with me. I don't know. The bear spray supposedly works, but as we talked about with the guy that was just got mauled in Montana, hit twice by that sow, and she obviously ran straight through the bear spray. And I've heard other accounts of that, and I think with the bears that are there, if they want what you have, they're going to get it. It's only for, I think, that kind of bear that's kind of curious that makes you feel more uneasy. Like, in all honesty, like with a bunch of guys around, like, you're probably going to scare the bear off. The bear's probably not going to like have any interest and eventually go away. He might get close and that might scare you, but like you'll probably pull out the bear spray thinking fear. And that's why I think a lot of times like you hear about the false charges and people shooting bear, and it does kind of suck. It's like, yeah, of course you're going to protect yourself and others, but when a bear is just kind of like, hey, you're in my area, and just kind of like
the bluff charge that's a confusing
it's hard
thing.
And I know other hunters have had those experiences plenty of times before, including Cole, as we discussed before. I love the guy, and what's up, Cole, but when he actually hit me up after the event when he found out, and he gave me shit. He's like, hey, asshole. It's supposed to be me that gets eaten by the bear. It's like, I'm the bear guy. Like, this is supposed to happen to me first, not you. So he gave me plenty of shit. But I know it's a very real thing. And the bear spray, if that's all you got awesome. That's all you got. But definitely strength in numbers and
Do you guys always stick together when you're in a place like Afognak?
No, and that was the part of the thing. But again, we were just focused on the elk then.
Yeah.
Not seeing anything else. The last thing any of us were expecting to run into was bear.
Yeah.
In those conditions. And
let's get into it.
Yeah.
So you guys had hunted a couple days, not seeing hide nor hair.
Yeah, nothing. I think it was, and I take that back. I think it was the end of the second day, just as the sun was going down, where another guy that was with me, he spotted him. Finally, we're just trying to find different spots, like going through the spruce and finding open areas where we can kind of glass and see whatever we can see. And finally, high up on a ridge line, saw like 2 to 4 of them. I think, now 3, 4, like 4 elk high up on the ridge line. We're like, thank God. Okay, it's like we finally saw something. We know that they're there. Awesome. Immediately, all right, let's break down. Let's head back. Let's see where we can get the boats in. With the surf and the winds the way they were, we want to make sure and kind of make this plan of attack to get up to where they were the following morning. So we scoped it out, looked on some maps, just kind of glassed the area, and found this ridge line that we decided to take, and made our plan and set it up following morning, got up really early before the sun and started hiking up, and certainly no easy going there. Took us a little while, but we made it up, and I think the line was still the best that we could have taken, and finally got up on the ridge line and hadn't seen anything, and conditions were still terrible. I think the weather predicted that it was supposed to be better. Of course, it was not. It was the opposite. It was actually more rainy, and didn't see him at first, and we had our suspicions because if people aren't aware, elk are very nomadic. They're not like deer where it's like, oh, sun goes down, they're gonna graze a little bit, maybe bed down, they'll probably be there and then move. No, elk can move really great distances, all through the night, and so of course we get out there and we're like, shit, gosh damn it, where are they? And I started walking the ridgelines more and finally saw them, but it wasn't for the whole herd, and I hadn't seen a full herd of elk yet. In Kodiak anyway. I'd heard that okay, there's always big herds of them, but we've always just seen onesie twosies, and that's what we've hunted. And honestly, that's kind of better, just because you don't have so many eyes on you. Yeah, but finding the herd was really really nice. We were we were just really really excited finally finding them. So we're at the top of the ridgeline, they're at the bottom of the valley, and then it was kind of great, but now what do we do? And of course, we're just sitting there for a while and looking around. And
how far below you are they at this point?
I don't know what elevation we were at. We were pretty high. We were definitely above alpine, so I don't think we were at top elevation 1,300 feet or so, and then they were almost probably at sea level. Yeah, not very much higher. So there was very little cover getting down to them. A lot of alder, but not really good spruce where you're going to get a shot anyway. So that was really the talk, is okay, how do we get down to these elk within range, get a shot, and then of course getting them out afterwards. And we figured we'd probably just take the valley out. But we decided hey, with there's 5 of us, let's split up. 3 go on one side of the herd and 2 stay on the other side of the herd. And we're basically just kind of try to make our way down and pray that they don't just find out we're there and then jet on the other side of the valley. Yeah. Hopefully they'll just kind of either move one way or the other, because they weren't really moving too much. They seemed a little weird, a little off. We couldn't really tell what it was. And so we just okay, let's just split them, get down, and then whoever can take a shot will hear the shot and cool, that's it. And then go to the other guys. And so we started moving, and myself and 2 other guys, we were the 3-man group, and started moving to one side of them, making our way across the ridgeline, then eventually down. And then, of course, we run into 3 other hunters. And
as it seems.
Oh, my God. Couldn't believe it. We were just in awe. One, we'd already been there 2 days. It was definitely a pissed off moment. And they were below us. They never saw us. Far down below us, they were just glassing. And it was okay, rightfully so. However they got there, they got there. They were clear. They're in front of us. But it pissed us off because no tact whatsoever, right out in the open, moving straight towards the elk. And okay, no wonder the elk are kind of weird. Their eyes are up on the hills. They're well, there we go. It's these, whatever. Gentlemen.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, gentlemen. I don't know who they were, but
gentlemen,
it was
hunters.
Yeah. definitely annoying.
They're probably they want it to be fair chase.
Yeah, right. And, they were doing their thing and whatever. Maybe it worked out for them. I don't know. But obviously it ticked us off and like, okay, well, rightfully so. These guys are lower. We're going to give them sort of like the right of way. But like, we're not going to end here. We're like, all right. The three of us decided like, hey, let's book it back to the other side, kind of climb back up the ridgeline, make our way over, trying to spook the elk, and then get back with the other two guys. Sure. I'm like, okay, from there, we're just going to try to make our way down and get on the other side. So it's like, hey, if we get down low enough, we take a shot first, then so be it. Or if they take a shot, hopefully they'll kind of like push them, drive them towards us. So we'll kind of be ready. So I kind of took the lead, running, sprinting my ass off to link up with the other two guys. And the two that were with me were behind me, and we're just kind of moving across the ridgeline. I start making my way across and then eventually down. And I'm just kind of starting to break down out of alpine into the alder, the thick brush there. And I saw the hat sticking out of the alder of one of the other guys. So that was kind of my eye. And one of the guys that was with me, he got my attention. He's like, we want to take another line down. And we were separated, a good distance at this point. So I started making my way up towards him. And this is a really, really steep hill. And matter of fact, there was a cliff kind of separating us. Not huge or anything, but it was probably, 30, 40 feet wide, maybe like 15, 20 feet tall. Just enough that it's like he's not going to like jump down over it. It's like he's going to be above it with the other guy, and I'm below it, and we're kind of converging at that cliff and then paralleling at that point. So I'm kind of just coming up towards the cliff, kind of coming back up the hill at this point, and I step over this rock, kind of climb over it, like terrain feature, so to speak. And as soon as I do, I stand up and turn, and right down the alder 5 yards away, there she is. And immediately, like, just stop, froze. And
what's she doing? Is she looking at you? Is she looking away?
No. So that was it. It's like when I saw her, it was just a big ball of fur.
Yeah.
Like no features, no anything. All I just see is this big thing of fur. And, I just stopped and I couldn't really make out anything. And of course, everything immediately like slows down. And the way I have related the story with other people that I've told is kind of like the state of flow.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, okay, everything immediately went in slow motion. I got like no concept of time from this point on. Like everything slowed down, making all the decisions in my head. And, so for me, I'm just, the gears are turning, and the first instinct I didn't know, I just big thing of fur. Okay. What is it? My mind's like, okay, processing. Cause I'm not even thinking about bear. I'm thinking about elk. And I'm like, okay, that's not the right color. And the color was actually like grayer. It wasn't really brown, like even a brown bear or an elk. And I'm like, okay, processing. But of course, no time whatsoever. I just stand up there. And as soon as I did, I took a step back, and because it kind of dawned on me finally, okay, this whatever it is not good. I know better, and took one step back. And whether it was the point where she finally heard me or finally smelt me and caught wind of me, she just turned her head and charged like immediately. And as soon as I took the step back, I knew that was going to be the case anyway. Like I said, with my experiences with bears, like everything's good, fine, and dandy because you don't surprise them. Like you never surprise a bear. Like they know you're there well before you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like you're hunting it from like hundreds of yards away. You're glassing them. But like if you're that close, like no way, they know you're there. And so as soon as I did, I'm like, there was no doubt in my mind. I'm like, this is going to happen. Like there's no getting out of this.
You don't feel like she was processed anything. She smelled or heard.
It was instinct.
Like it was instinctual. Mm-hmm. Like there's danger.
Yep.
Something's not right. Yep. I've got to. I have to address this issue.
There was no and being 5 yards away. I don't have to exaggerate the distance. Wherever I know 5 yards very well. And for people unaware, that talk about running away from bears and stuff, bears run at 30 plus miles an hour. Yeah. Like that's a leap. A way that the bears can they're insanely,
that's like somebody
fast.
You being 5 yards from the hood of a car and somebody flooring it.
Yeah. No,
you thinking you're going to jump out of the way.
They could cover a 5 yards in a millisecond, really. Well, at top speed. So it took a little bit longer than that, but in real time, like that's a second, really.
Yeah. And how long? I mean, when you're processing, you see the bear, you're processing it. It's moments until it charges you. I mean,
no, it was almost instantaneous. Like I said, I stood up and I did take a step back because once it immediately clicked, which is, probably a millisecond. She probably, as soon as I stood up, probably smelt me or whatever, and it took her probably a millisecond too, just to turn. So I don't really know the time-wise there, but I just knew there was no, she wasn't standing up. There was no like snort. There was no like, kind of bluffing, beefing up. It was just like it startled her, scared her. She's like, what is this that just really snuck up behind me? Because just by her head turn, she was facing downhill. And my suspicion as well, these other guys, she's probably hunting the same elk we were.
Oh, for sure.
Like wanted, something to do with it, whether she was going to hunt them or like, capitalize on something else. She was there for a reason, like right near the elk, and she was just hunkered down in the alder, either making her way through or just like waiting.
Yeah.
And so when I came up behind her, it was sheer surprise. So, of course, instinctively, I immediately yelled out bear and instinctively was pulling my rifle up. I ripped the scope cover off and started presenting, my rifle. And I knew, I'm like, this isn't going to happen. And this is the first time out, and I've shot it a few times now, but I got a new rifle. It was 6.5 Creedmoor. Yeah. And I was really excited about it because it was insanely light. My goal is I really like guns, and I huge proponent of I just love shooting in general. But I built this specifically to be extremely light, like the lightest rifle I have. The whole thing with 5 rounds in it is less than 6 pounds. Yeah. So it's like a toothpick, you're holding it. So it's so great, great, going to be great for goats and future elk hunts and everything else. But of course, it's not going to take down a bear. Never in a million years ever take that as a backup. It's for people that don't know, it's this little teeny tiny round. Like it's goes shoot fast and straight, and it's going to take a lot of shot placement, but it doesn't have a lot of power, and especially for a bear. And I knew I'm like, okay, if I get this hip shot, if anything off, it's just going to piss her off. It's not going to take her down. And then I'm going to take 500 pounds to the face and the body, and I'll end up like one of those stories. And all of this is just turning in my mind, and I knew it, started raising it, threw it down, and then I just Superman down the hill. And of course, when I say that, it's like, yeah, it's a little bit of a drop, but I'm not really going anywhere. Yeah. And just kind of jumped in the alders and covered up my head and neck as best I could. And again, no concept of time, but it felt like I didn't even hit the ground, and she was already on me. She had a bite in the back of my leg, high up on my right leg, just below my ass. And she picked me up just by that and just threw me over that same like rock, like kind of terrain feature that I was kind of falling down. I fall on my head. She's just kind of like just throwing me around like a rag doll. She picks me up, and as I'm falling, she's trying to re-bite me, and she bites me in the nuts, and I'm kind of like head down, face down. I just feel her top 2 canines like going into the taint, and I'm like, that's not good. Like I fall, and she's just biting me in the leg, like traveling on the leg, bites me real hard, almost like kind of behind the knee at this point. And fortunately, like the guys were Johnny on the spot. Of course, this is just like seconds this is happening. Yeah. And the guy,
you remember screaming or yelling?
I did on the first one, but it's funny, training dogs, I think it had a lot to do with it. And when you train dogs like for bite work and stuff, it drives them. Just like when they say with animals, like the whole playing dead thing, it actually has a lot of truth behind it, because it's just kind of like this instinctual prey that when you do bite, or when they bite, and you scream, it just drives them even more to bite harder. So the first one I yelled out, and I'm like, I'm like, that was obviously making things way worse. And I'm like, okay, this is it. It's like, this is going to suck. Like, it's going to be really, really bad. And even when I dove, I'm like, I knew that. Like, there's no protecting myself. It's fully relying on everybody else around me to take over at this point. I'm like, okay, here's trusting the boys. Like, I know they know their shit. Like, this is it.
You covering your head at this point?
Like I never let go. I was like just head, or hands behind the head and neck. And, I kind of got a gash in my eye from just getting thrown into some alder or something at some point. But I'm like, yeah, I'm not letting go. Like, this is all I got, like, to hold on to. And right when she was stolen the leg, the guy above me took a shot, and, as he tells it too, obviously we all collected our own stories after the event, and he didn't hear what I said. None of them did. Like, they were all like somewhat close by, but they couldn't make out what I said. Like, I was yelling bear, but just said it once, and then I was mauled, and they just heard the scream, and then they heard all the growling, and then they immediately knew. So all I did is get up over the cliff and he peered down, and he had to kind of make a judgment call at that point because couldn't see me. Like the bear's just like engulfed on me, like couldn't see me at all. Made a judgment call and put one, high in her back. And wherever that bullet ended up, I don't know, but fortunately it didn't end up me. And I would have done the same thing. Like I'm thankful he did it and didn't kill her. It just kind of pissed her off, and out of fear and anger, she bit me again, like kind of clawing at my back at this point. And the backpack definitely.
Yeah, you were wearing a Stone Glacier.
Stone Glacier, yeah.
Shout out
to Stone Glacier.
Just Posito. Appreciate you, buddy.
I even told Coles, like, hey, man, like, I know you know those guys, like, let them know. I was like, definitely saved my ass. And I got
literally
a few claw marks on my back, but no, it definitely took some heavies and saved me. But she, kind of got to the side and then sunk one in my arm pretty good. And then the second shot went out. She just reloaded really quick, put another one in her, had a little bit better shot then, and that one dropped her. It kind of at that point hurt her enough. I heard a very distinct moan, kind of that kill shot type deal, and she fell kind of on top of me, but a little to the side too, not really engulfing me. And ironically, I was a little more nervous at that point, even not being bit, because she was right there. I was more nervous about the back of my head and neck because I couldn't see her at all. I'm kind of on my left side, with my hands behind my head and neck and looking up the hill at the two other guys that were with me when we split up. And all I could see all I could just feel was just her, and like I could hear the breath, I could feel the fur. I'm like, oh God, I'm like, just don't bite me. Like that's all I kept thinking. I was like, all right, I'm hoping that bite doesn't come like on my head or something. And fortunately, she started kind of crawling away. She was obviously really hurting at that point, and barely kind of stumbling, crawling away. Couldn't see her. I was just still faced uphill. But the other guy that was with me and the other one when we split up, he ran down the hill. And he had a Glock 20 on him with 10 mil. And he just kind of got to me, pulled out the Glock, ran by me, and just dumped a mag. Just dumped a mag in there to finish her off, make sure she wasn't going to come after us anymore. And immediately at that point is when I started taking the backpack off, unzipping clothing, like trying to get things. Couldn't move my leg at all at this point. It was just, I knew that was the worst of it. And little side note on this one, unfortunately, I was completely unaware, but what I found out afterwards is when they took that first shot is, put one in her back, they saw a cub run out of the alder. Yeah. So of course, like I've told everybody, it's like, no, having the experience that I do with bears, which is pales in comparison to some people, of course, but they're not aggressive, they're not nasty. It's like I've been around sows and cubs before, and you just keep your distance, but with the conditions the way they were, with the heavy rains and the winds, it's like I come up on her and definitely surprised her. Yeah, she was probably hunting the elk territorial, and she had a cub. It's like there's no escaping this.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect storm, for lack of a better term, and her heightened protective instincts there.
Oh, for sure.
Any surprise? She knows the cub, and it sounds like the cub was below her, probably.
Yeah.
So it was you, her, and the cub.
Yeah, I never saw the cub at all. It was completely out of my sight and out of my mind. But
generally, when folks think about bear attacks, they're thinking about this situation: sow, cub.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely the worst. Mama bear and her cubs. Like that's what you don't want to mess with, and it's like that's the most precarious when you're getting around that type of situation. It's like, okay, this isn't just a bear like with some fish, and it's like you got to be more cautious and definitely make it aware that you don't want anything to do with them.
How long do you think the attack lasted?
No idea. Like only seconds. Like I'd say probably still under a minute. For sure, the whole ordeal was probably still only like a minute, and that's
how long did it feel for you?
That's hard to say too. It's a totally different world.
Yeah.
Been in plenty of kind of flow type states in my life where I've been under a lot of stress, and I don't know. People always ask me too, is like, did you pass out? I'm like, no, I didn't pass out, and I think the adrenaline took over in a lot of ways that I wasn't in a lot of pain initially either. A lot of it was just like a really, really heightened sense of what was going on. Yeah. It wasn't the sense where I was like, okay, I didn't know what was going to, what I was doing or anything. I just knew that my best situation for survival was just being extremely keen on everything going on and in. Like even as the bites are happening, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, okay, I know what those wounds could be, like the worst case scenario, like what it is. Like, okay, that's what I'm going to have to do afterwards to treat this.
It sounds like you're thinking practically.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the end.
Yeah,
like,
you weren't thinking about your friends, your family, like the
No,
end.
it really wasn't. I was just thinking like the situation as it is, just really, really in the moment. And as everything was going on. So naturally, again, as soon as the other guy that had the pistol like ran by me, that's initially it was my first thought. I was like, okay, the battle's over. It's won. It's done. It's taken care of. Now it's like, okay, we gotta treat this. Everything that's going on with me. And I knew the other guys had the same process. Like they're figuring everything out. And
did you during the attack, you remember any distinctive sounds or smells or things that ping your memory back to that?
I certainly remember the growling and everything the bear was making. That's unquestionable. Fortunately, there was no like gnarly bone breaks or anything that I had to endure or hear or crunching or anything like that. It was just her. And I remember kind of the snorts and the breathing and the smells. No, I know that sounds kind of funny because I know smells are some of the biggest. It's the number one sense that recalls memory. And no, I don't really have a lot of smells, probably because there wasn't a whole lot besides moisture in the air, for me to smell.
Yeah.
Given the conditions and the winds, and probably the same reason why she didn't smell me either.
Yeah.
And that's all I can think of. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about the smells too much. But
just the impact of her teeth and claws.
Yeah. No, certainly felt it and knew, but it was definitely kind of surreal. And it's weird because whenever I think back upon it too, is I have kind of different visions of the same thing, not necessarily like PTSD or anything, but I definitely think back on it and I have different points of view of being in first person and also in third person and just like experience the same thing. So it's kind of unique, but quite the experience there. The treatment portion in itself was pretty funny too. One of the so the other two after everything happening, they finished off the bear. Let's
return to the timeline.
I definitely had to get to it because it is kind of funny, and I got a really good bunch of group of guys with me, and one of them has some pretty good medical experience that he's had in his past, and he came over, and everybody's kind of getting their ducks in a row, so to speak, and delegating stuff out, and guys are reloading because we're also thinking, hey, the cub or multiple cubs could still be around. I was like, doesn't mean they can't come back. Like a cub can mess you up just as well as mama bear could, especially one that might be ticked off or protective of mama bear. So the guys were very weary of that as well, but fortunately never saw the cub, and they immediately just start breaking out the sat phone, DeLorme inReaches, and getting on those. And DeLorme inReach, they activated the SOS beacon that was on it, and guys were getting on the sat phone, making phone calls. So as this was happening, as I said, I'm taking off my clothing as best I could, just like unzipping stuff and trying to get stuff out. And I had my aid kit, and I'm telling them where that is, and they were using their own aid kits as well. And the guy that was working on me, he's starts to get his shears out, and he's cutting all the clothing off on me and trying to get at the wounds. And immediately when he came up to me, I told him like, hey, I need a tourniquet on my right leg. Just practice that we've done before, because I knew that the leg took the worst, and I was nervous about any type of like heavy artery damage that could be. And certainly where the wounds were, fortunately that wasn't the case, but it still could have been under the circumstances, especially couldn't move my leg. So
was there a lot of blood? I mean,
there was significant, but really there wasn't. Certainly not enough to put me into shock or anything. Just a fair bit of blood just from
your buddies could tell there's trauma, but there wasn't.
But of course I'm like wearing one set of pants and then rain pants and then gaiters and then boots, so everything's kind of covering everything up, so you can't really see besides just a bunch of puncture wounds everywhere, like holes in the clothing. So once he starts cutting everything off, he's kind of sees them, rolls me over, and he's like, okay, we can take the tourniquet off because like it was good. We're just going to pack this. The blood's not that bad. And I was like, the only thing going through my head is because I've had some training with tourniquets and stuff before. I'm like, okay, we got to go real slow because I do not want to lose my leg because it's happened before where guys have taken tourniquets off too fast and that rush of blood back into the appendage, that's how you lose one. So a little nervous on that point, but we're going through and he's looking at the wounds like, okay, they're not that bad. And I'm trying to point out other wounds, but I knew that the leg was the worst. But as soon as you kind of get through it, I'm like, hey, I need you to look at my taint. I'm like, I know, because I remember that. And I was like, okay.
I don't want to laugh right now.
No. I was laughing. I was just saying, I'm telling you, like, I'll have to show you pictures afterwards. But I was going through the moment of it. And I'm like, okay, no homo here, but I really need you to check my taint. And he's like, okay. He's like, undoes it, pulls up my, underwear, but it's kind of underneath. And he looks and he's like, no, you're good, bud. And I'm like, okay. But I knew something was wrong. I'm like, it doesn't feel right. And he, kind of goes back, through cutting off other pieces of clothing. And I'm like, no, man, like something's not right. I need you to really check. So he cuts off the pants, like to my underwear at least this point, and like lift up the underwear. And even before that, you could see the underwear was just a hole in it with just blood everywhere. And I'm like, damn it. So he lifts it up and like, yep. I'm like just looking down, like just as, looking underneath my underwear. I'm like, yep, there it is. There's my testicle hanging out. Like, great. And, he sees it too. He's like, okay. And, I just reached down. I'm like, got to put that back in, pretend that like that never happened.
Dude.
And so then, of course, that's all that was on my mind. I'm like, gosh, damn it. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. And I'm also like still aware. I'm like, okay, I know my arm and my back is kind of messed up. I'm like, okay, here's one here. And I tell him, and he cuts it off. He's like, yep, okay, I see it. And, they're packing those wounds as well. But it was still in my mind. I'm like, hey, does anybody have any, like, a sock or something I can shove down there? Like, I don't want it to pop out again. Because that's all I'm thinking.
It's still attached, though, huh?
Oh, it was. Like little nunchucks, hanging around.
Oh, baby.
Still down there. Still good. But
so you felt like it's attached.
Yeah, it's like, it's got to be still good,
functional,
right? And
there's just been the bubble has burst.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh man, I know guys have like vasectomies and stuff, but it doesn't come out. They just like reached in there and make a little snip, and it's good. Cut the little whatever it is down there, vas deferens, whatever it is, and I'm like, oh man, you got to be kidding me. And so of course it was on my mind. I'm like nervous about it coming back out, and so I'm like, I was asking him, he's gonna get like a sock or something. I just didn't want it to pop out like when I'm getting moved around and stuff. I'm like, gosh, damn it,
bandana or
exactly, something. And it's like, no, it's in the underwear, like it's good, like not gonna focus on it, but of course I'm focused on it. And the jokes just start coming out immediately. Like, guys are like, don't worry about it, man. You only need one. Like, you still have kids. Like, really, like, lighthearted guys. And I'm just laughing
Lance
at the
Armstrong
same time.
has one.
Honestly, I was in really good spirits to the whole thing. Like, knew I wasn't going to die. Knew nothing bad was going to happen. I'm laughing, too. And we're cracking jokes. And immediately, barely made it out. As many bear jokes as you can make immediately, and it just started.
A hairy situation.
Situation.
I could go all day.
And it was great, but I know they found some like little scary strip type things and put that on there. And of course, if you have any type of like organs rip out, you're never supposed to put them back in. So that was also kind of a thing. I'm like, no, that's okay. I'll put them back in. Like, I don't want that thing just hanging around willy nilly.
I'm putting that back in.
Yeah, it's going in.
Against medical advice. I'm putting it back in. There's no, that just.
Yeah. I was like, I never want anybody to experience that, because that's not a fun feeling, just seeing it like hanging out.
As a podcast host, speechless right now. Continue. Yeah. I have nothing to add to the conversation. There's nothing I can say. Continue your story.
So it's at this point, I'm kind of patched up, and the guys are getting out their, puff jackets, insulating jackets, and trying to cover me back up because I'm essentially kind of naked on one half of my body. And given the conditions, it was pretty brutal. And I got to say, with the whole experience, that was certainly the worst part, was just enduring the cold.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly no stranger to cold. Living up there, being from Maine before that, and doing a lot of type of outdoor training and having experiences. I know the cold, but that one, I was just jackhammering. It was hard going. Waiting on the Coast Guard, which we had gotten in contact with via the sat phone.
So how quickly to the wounds are dressed as well as they could, the testicles back in its place, everything is you guys feel like stable at this point. Mm-hmm. How quickly did that happen until you were making those calls and expecting the rescue?
So we were on the bird. We had no idea what to expect with them as time-wise and how soon they would get there. Getting spun up, it's not a long flight. Like, it's only like I want to say 15, 20 minutes for them to fly
from
the base to Afognak.
As we talked about before, it's a scary thing just because of the weather. You don't know. It can change so quickly.
Exactly. And the cloud cover had kind of lifted. It wasn't as low as it had been earlier in the day, so that was certainly a blessing. But it still wasn't great conditions by any means either. And, of course, they still had to find us. But we were walking them on. Guys were Johnny on the spot with grid coordinates, passing them like lat and long, whatever they needed it in, and got them the coordinates and walked them on there. But I did want to touch out on one piece because you mentioned it earlier, and that was a learning point for us, is the DeLorme InReach.
Yeah.
So the InReach SOS button, we activated it.
Yeah, so if nobody is aware, like the DeLorme InReach is a GPS / GPS communicator that you can text on. I use it to text my wife, so I stay in good graces when I'm off.
Off the grid. Yeah,
and on the side of it, there's a SOS button. You can peel back this plastic rubber covering and push this SOS button that's supposed to send a signal out, a beacon saying something happened bad. Come get me.
Exactly, that's it. And we use it for the primary reason, just like you said. Texting is one of the biggest things when we're off the grid. We can't text any other means, and we're not going to waste minutes and time on that sat phone. So it's been great for that. However, we never really knew what the SOS button was going to do.
I've carried one of those around for years.
Somebody come save me, save our souls. That's literally what it is. And we activated it. Fortunately, we had the sat phone with us, but when we activated it, come to find out afterwards, the state troopers got it first. Talked to a state trooper when I was in the hospital, and he's like, they got the call first. But by the time they got the call, didn't really know what it was. They just knew it was some sort of emergency beacon, no idea of the situation. I think it gives them a GPS coordinate and just tells them something bad's happened. That's pretty much it. And probably the user name, I think, whatever his information is, because it wasn't my DeLorme, which is somebody else's. Mine was just still in my bag.
This guy in trouble, these coordinates.
Right, exactly. And so that went out, and by the time they had any inclination of what was going on, what it was, Coast Guard was already spun up on their way. So saw they were really quick to react, like they were, because we had them on the sat phone.
Yeah, I was going to say, without a sat phone,
then it would have been like, okay, they would have had to call the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard would have had no idea what was going on. They would have had to reach out on the DeLorme, and I don't know if that's via text how that would go down or what, but would have been a little bit different, maybe even longer. And so as this was going down, I'm just kind of sitting there waiting at this point. There's nothing else to do. The guys that weren't on the comms piece were just kind of cutting branches because we knew, getting a bird in, they're going to come lift me out. And so they're just kind of cutting down branches in the area, trying to clear, pave away. Couldn't really move. I think, given different circumstances, if I didn't have another bunch of guys around me and if I was solo, it would have been just a hellacious story. Like, who knows what or could have happened, but fortunately that was not the case. So I was just
the other two guys in your hunting party still don't know this is going on, or
no, they were with us. The other two that were separate, they heard all the commotion.
That's what I mean. So they came up.
Yeah, it was that guy, or one of the two, that actually he came up and he was the one treating my wounds.
Okay,
so he was one with medical.
So you're all together.
Yeah, everybody's together. Everybody pitched in, and it was the other guy from the other party that he was on the sat phone, and he was doing that piece. So kind of everybody's, finding a job, doing something at this point. Like I said, really, really textbook. Couldn't have went down any better whatsoever. Everybody's doing, a job or looking for something to do. And, at that point in time, it was just sit and wait, and they're talking to him on the bird, and bird comes in and, hoists the guy down first, and he kind of comes and assesses me and asks me questions, and I'm completely coherent, answering them, good spirits, yada, 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 checking everything over. They come up with a plan of action to get the litter down and then put me on the litter and then and hoist me up. Whole process definitely took longer than I would have liked. I think it...
Did it ever...
I know the incident happened right around 1:10, I think is when the attack happened. And I didn't have a chance to check my watch and everything in the hospital. They took it all off. But it was like roughly, from what I heard, about 2.5 hours later that I was actually at the hospital. So blessing going out to the Coast Guard still saved my ass.
Love you,
but
yeah.
That definitely,
it's a long time.
If it was a fatal wound, like, there's no question, it'd been a fatal wound. Well out of the golden hour, like 1 hour period, we're like, okay, my life might have been saved. So still saved my ass. Wasn't too happy about their hoist camera that they have. So on their helicopter they have a hoist camera like going right down the cable, like where it's lifting me up, and immediately like as soon as it went down, like they had that camera footage of hoisting me up, off the ground, and posted on Facebook, like social media. So love the Coast Guard, still saved my ass, but they immediately posted that. So
for what reason?
I don't know. For their own reason, like, hey, saved a hiker, hunter, whatever, from a bear mauling.
Self promotion. Like, we're awesome.
And again, like I give it to them 100%. It's like, hey, I would absolutely give them, the save, the rescue, and good for them. But I was kind of like, man, to post it immediately, it made me and other guys more upset, because I had other guys, that I know, and they were out in the field. And outside of work, and they found out through Facebook before they found out from guys, like phone calls, like, hey, guy just got mauled, whatever else, like through anything else. And fortunately, my folks didn't find out that way. I called them when I got to the hospital, but I'm kind of like, that's pretty messed up to do it, so soon. And I'm like, yeah, it didn't make me happy, and I do want to give them the rescue and everything else. But I was like, man, that's pretty unprofessional as far as
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, it's like marketing their ability.
Yeah, and again, I'm not against them doing that. Like, they do a lot of good things there. Like, they are the biggest base, is in Kodiak for the Coast Guard, and rightfully so. They save a lot of people.
Yeah, no, like you're saying.
Yeah.
All props for the life-saving efforts, but
come on, yeah,
streamline,
really, yeah, come on,
streamline that social process. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
But was there moments in the waiting? Because you talk about like sounds and smells of the attack, right? Mm-hmm. But are there moments in the waiting to be rescued, in air quotes, I guess, where things started to settle in your mind as to what happened, or was it still a tactical, I got to get out of here, I need to stay alive, I need to get, but you obviously weren't given any duties. You had to, lay there, be warm, and be stable.
Survive.
Survive.
That was pretty much it.
So during that time, do you remember your mind drifting to any particular things other than...
No, I was pretty focused in the moment still. Yeah. No, I never, I don't know, I'm a very determined, focused kind of individual, and guys that know me know the same thing, that I definitely don't let anybody tell me how things are going to go, or how I'm going to live my life, or how things are going to turn out, or odds, or anything like that. It really kind of drives me and forces me to work even harder. So the only thoughts going through my mind is like, okay, cool. Well, I wonder how long this is going to take before I'm back to doing the same old things I'm going to be doing. Like, nothing in my mind was like, oh, I'm Limp Bizkit now. Besides like the jokes of like, I wonder if I can have kids, but I'm single. Like, I don't have a girlfriend, no wife, no kids from anybody else.
Yeah.
It's like,
no pressure.
It's like, what if I'm going to prove this, I'm going to prove it, however many years down the road, like if that's even going to happen. So, the only thing going through my mind is like, all right, I wonder how long it's going to take me out of the picture,
just
how
determination,
I'm just kind of like, okay, what's next? Like, I survived, like,
no sorry moments,
none whatsoever. And I was really, really proud, I guess, of the guys that were with me.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
All right, Brad Jameson, man, the myth, still here, still alive. A little banged up, but doing just fine.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
And so we got one more bear attack to go through. Now, Phil, this is the only one you were a part of in the recording.
Yep.
I would say, back to back here, we have the most talked about podcasts in the history of the show, right back to back. One being Brad's bear attack, and two being Dr. Barrie Gilbert's appearance on the show. Would you agree with the second?
Yes. Uh-huh.
But I was wondering if it made sense to include this here, because really what we were talking about after the Barrie Gilbert interview was not the bear attack. It was all the other things that happened after the bear attack story.
And you know what happened after the bear attack story was crazy, because we had a man in here who had half his face mauled by a bear. And after he left, I don't think we talked about his bear attack story at all.
No. And so that's why when I was looking at what we would do for this best of, I wanted to make sure we got his bear attack story in there and just that.
It's because, honestly, it's a good story.
It's a great story.
And it's kind of a bummer that ended up not being the takeaway from the show.
It is a bit of a bummer, but we still appreciate the story, even if the show didn't go right after this happened. It didn't go the way that we thought it might go. So I wanted to make sure this is another great example of, what not to do in the outdoors as far as how you go through bear country, but also in Barrie's case, you're just a little bit unlucky. And you'll hear the similarities. They're pretty stark, the similarities between Brad's story and Barrie's story. And so listen for those parallels. And appreciate Barrie's story for what it is. And again, he uses very succinct language. He says, "I charged the bear. I charged the bear," and he's doing that very deliberately, and for obvious reasons. He's an advocate for bears, and so just listen to that language, listen to Barrie, and enjoy his story of his attack in Yellowstone some 30 years ago.
I guess I grew up on an older road, a pedal to the metal.
Mr. Barrie Gilbert, how are you, sir?
Very good. Nice to be in Bozeman.
Yeah. How are you enjoying your Bozeman times thus far?
It's been great. I'm staying up in the mountains east of town, and it's really nice wild country. I'm going to be going down to Yellowstone a couple of days, too, so that'll be good.
Can't ever get enough of that country.
Exactly.
Here. Well, welcome to the Meat Eater Studios and to the Hunting Collective. Thanks for coming, and really appreciate your time. I would guess that a lot of our listeners are unaware of your story, which I'm glad to kind of go through it in detail.
Yes, it was. I was attacked 42 years ago, and it's in my book that I just written called "One of Us: A Biologist's Walk Among Bears." I'll get my plug in early.
But as a trained professional.
Yeah, I started out with grizzly bear work, trying to work on human-bear interactions, how people were affecting bears in Yellowstone. And I was out with a graduate student 10 miles from the nearest road up the Indian Creek Trail near Bighorn Pass. And I saw grizzly bears in the morning when we got up around 6 o'clock, and they were so far away that I suggested my student we take a big circle around the bears and bushwhack up a distant ridge, which was at 9,200 feet. The long and the short was that he stopped for a nature call, and I went over the ridge and stayed low so I wouldn't get elk barking when they saw me on the skyline. And I was hunched over and moving swiftly so I wouldn't be up there on the skyline. And unfortunately, I charged a bear lying in its daybed, and it was a female with cubs. And she didn't think much of that. In fact, she came at me like a freight train with her claws hitting the ground and put me in the hospital for 2 months. She basically took off the side of my face, my nose, ears, and scalped me. And I ended up with shortly short of 1,000 stitches in my head. But I had a magnificent rescue. I told them not to kill that bear. It was something that I did in a surprise encounter with a bad assumption. And I went back within a couple of years. My student went to Yosemite to study easier going bears, and he got a good master's thesis out of that. And I got an opportunity, I think it was 4 or 5 years later, to go to Katmai National Park, where now upwards of 50 or 60 brown bears come down onto salmon streams, and there are 500 to 600 people a day walking along them. When I started the research in 1983, it was, of course, a time of fewer interactions, but they still knew that the bears were being bumped off the river, and I designed a study to gather very detailed data about their numbers on the river and people numbers through the day and through the week from dawn till dusk. We did sampling, a 4-hour sampling.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. You rush through some stuff I want to definitely cover. I mean, it's June 27th, 1977 when the attack occurred, and you say 42 years now from that time, and obviously so much of your life has kind of been defined by that moment. When you look back on that day, there's so much to go through, but I thought the most amazing part as I'm reading your story, and people can read it in One of Us, and I was reading your stories as you've written, you're talking about the rescue, 1,000 sutures, you're basically scalped, you're losing a bunch of blood, and then how you were rescued that day. Can we go through that? The moment that your student Bruce found you and then called this in and kind of how that all played out. Sure. This is very interesting to me.
Yeah, the short story, there's a whole chapter, actually. The second chapter is the marvelous rescue I had. We had a Park Service radio, and my student picked that up and got onto the main channel with the Park Service. They shut down the whole communication system just to talk to us, and my student said that I was badly enough injured. Well, he asked me how I was, and it occurred to me, I gargled, I'm okay. Yes. I think I'm still alive, but then I thought, Bruce, tell him I'm dying, because I really was dying. I was bleeding out right there. And they launched a small Nash-type helicopter. They found a pilot downtown shopping.
His name was Jim?
Jim Thompson, yeah. Marvelous guy.
Yeah.
And he got in this sort of rickety helicopter that was losing its supercharger, and he's coming in at 9,000 feet trying to pick up a guy in a windstorm. I mean, the air up there, and he couldn't land next to me. So anyway, he landed in a small valley next door, and he brought with him Tom Black, who was the leader of the rescue operations. And Tom realized when he saw me with Jim that they needed some serious help there. So they called smoke jumpers from West Yellowstone Smoke Jump Base, and a DC-3 launched from there with 8 smoke jumpers who dropped packages right on, almost hit me. And the guys did a marvelous job of getting me stabilized, and they took me down to Lake Hospital, which was maybe 20 minutes by chopper. And lo and behold, the University of Utah Medical Center had rotated in 4 Vietnam trauma surgeons who were just going up for a couple of weeks at a clinic. And so these guys had seen people blown apart by shrapnel and all kinds of nasty wounds. And they further stabilized me. And then the ambulance took me out to West Yellowstone Airport. And Salt Lake had sent up basically a flying operating room and got me down. And they started working on me at 11 o'clock at night and 11-hour surgery, closing all those wounds. And, of course, then you got to beat the infections. Infections. Your face
every time
too.
we talk about bear attacks, that's the thing that you try to talk about is when you have an open wound that was caused by an animal.
They've got one filthy mouth.
Yeah. And you can't really just close that wound right back up
Bingo.
without infection bacteria.
I was just covered with tubes.
Yeah. That's unbelievable.
I can laugh now. It's sort of gallows humor, but it was nip and tuck. My temperature in the hospital kept going up around 104. I could have clocked out right then easily.
Yeah. Do you think of moments during I'm sure what was kind of like a very intense and very wild whirlwind to get out of there, to get, there's some serendipity involved with your medical care too. Was there moments in there where you thought, this is it for me? Like,
you mean dying or the end of the research?
Either one. I mean, either or both. I'm interested in moments during that time.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't dwell on that, and I don't like to talk publicly too much about it. But you get a TV producer stick a camera in your face, and Dr. Gilbert, how'd you feel when you lost your face and you thought you were going to die and your family was going to be without a husband? And I thought, F you. I don't answer those kind of things. But I realized that I was close to death. And one day in the hospital, I was watching the television, and I saw a turtle walk across on the television screen. And I started to cry, and I couldn't stop crying. I knew I was going to live. So there you go. I'm choking up already 42 hours years later.
42 years later.
Yeah. But,
we're not gonna go. I just wanted to, kind of just understand a little bit of.
Well,
of what
and it's a reasonable question, because then the next one is, well, how the heck did you decide to go back and study even bigger bears?
Exactly.
So
exactly, yeah. And when it's hard to. And again, we were talking before this. I know with this podcast and with our company here at Meat Eater, we're a media company, and we look at the numbers. We look at what people want to hear about, and when we talk about bear attacks, more people listen, more people pay attention.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to base our audience to say it's just a sensationalist part of it, but there is some version of that intrigue for us.
Well, there's a lot of both ignorance and fear, and that's very normal. I don't say that to be pejorative toward people, but if we really want to fear something, we ought to fear the automobile. It kills and maims more people, and you can go on YouTube or whatever and see got people's arms with their watch still on and the bears torn in pieces. You don't see that with automobiles. All that sort of stuff happens, and you don't get visuals of it.
Actually, my wife, as I was going elk hunting not too long, a couple of weeks ago, she said, "Are there going to be bears? Are you going to get attacked? There's been bear attacks recently." I said, "It's more dangerous for me to drive over to the hunting spot and hike up in there than it is to actually hunt there." And I believe that solely, and I don't let my personal belief is I can't let that inherent. There's danger inherent in everything.
Sure.
And to sensationalize one version of it because it seems a little bit more visceral, a little bit more scary, is just not intellectually honest for me. So I just try to, you're playing the odds with everything.
Only the sociologists could tell us why we're so obsessed with carnivores attacking people. Maybe it's a control thing. But look at the numbers of people who have been dying from opioids, 700,000, 800,000 people. Yet 2 grizzly bear attacks will get a hell of a lot more press than all these deaths of fine young people. that are on a drug that shouldn't be on the market.
Yeah, no, those comparisons they're pretty stark when you start to think about how, like you said, we've had, like I said, 4 bear attacks in the Gravelly Mountain Range here in south of Bozeman recently, and when I was traveling around prior to elk opening day, I had more conversations with hunters that I know in the industry and without the industry that about grizzly bears than I did about elk. We weren't talking about like, what elk did you see? What bull were you on? We're talking about, are there grizzly bears in your area?
And the other thing about hunters is some of them have the John Wayne myth that if they've got a 357 Magnum or something, they'll be stopping that bear. No. Believe me, you won't be stopping a bear with a pistol. Your arms will be jumping like your heart. It'll be trying to get out of your chest. Yep. And unless you've had combat training, if you really want to defend yourself with something like a short barrel shotgun or a pistol, go to a garbage dump and get one of your friends to roll a truck tire down at you from the hill, and you stop that truck tire with a pistol or a shotgun.
Yeah.
And if you can stand there and stop that, remaining cool, you'd be okay with killing a bear. But who wants to kill a bear?
Yeah. What do you think about bear spray?
I'm a believer. I think the studies of it are sufficient. People always say, well, it doesn't work every time. Well, of course it doesn't work every time. Skunks developed pretty good bear spray, and they still get eaten. So, but it'll blind and make the bears choke and fill their lungs. And people say, oh, well, the wind will blow it back. No, it won't. It's got so much pressure with that gas, it'll just go out. I've shown people how to use it lots of times.
Yeah.
I'm a believer. But, the unknown aspect of it is that when you stand there with your weapon, bear spray, your behavior tells that bear that you're not a chicken. If you don't have a bear spray, your instinct is to run, which I did, because you have to get some distance. Maybe you can collapse, maybe you can wet your pants, but if you're holding bear spray, you're standing facing the bear, and of course you have to believe it's going to work, which it does. Yeah. Then the bear says, hell no, I was just wanting to chase you, but I don't want to fight you.
Yeah. What choice, like you said, what choice has, when you're facing down a bear like that, there's a lot of things you can say you would do, but until you've been in that situation.
Bingo.
I would like to say, we were talking about this, one of our editors outside earlier today when we were thinking about you coming in. I was saying, like, carrying a pistol, we all think, oh, we'll do it. It's just I'd like to have both rather than just one. I was thinking of, and it's something I had never really considered, is that I feel safer with a pistol in my hand than I do bear spray just innately. Just because I feel the pistol's more powerful, so I'm probably going to reach for that before I reach for bear spray. But to your point, man, I've shot 3 gun matches in different competitions where in practice I can hit the 10 ring with a pistol, and then when somebody's behind me timing me and there's 15 other people watching and I've got to run up to a thing and shoot, when there's any pressure applied, I am the most inaccurate person that you could ever. So to try to even compare that, which is, tangibly comparable to the moment of frenzy when there's a bear, coming down on you, I think it's difficult to do.
Well, I was on the ground with bears a lot, and we did some darting for collaring for a lodge owner. I don't do any collaring myself for my projects, but whenever I was out on the ground, I carried a shotgun, a pump Mossberg with slugs and deer shot, buckshot, and I figured I always carried bear spray, and bear spray was the first reach for me. I'm not I'm a gun guy, but I'm not a hunter of big game. I figure that I might have to use the shotgun to shoot a bear off my student. I want 2 backups. I want bear spray, and then if the bear's got him down, I can walk up and plug him in the head or the neck or the shoulders or do whatever you can. You're running on instinct there. They don't have bear shooting classes like they have sailboat classes,
Yes, that would be difficult. And I know FWP for some time, they had a trailer they would pull around that had a charging bear thing, and they would say that
that woman is speaking tonight.
Yeah.
At the Lindley Center just before I give the talk. There.
Yeah, so and they would do bear spray training, and I don't want to get the number wrong, but it was a very small percentage of people that could get the bear spray and effectively get it in the air before that charging fake bear.
You're talking milliseconds.
Yeah, it's tough.
When a bear decides to charge, standing facing it and hoping to God that it's a bluff charge, and you can change your underwear later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And like I was telling you before, I'm an East Coast kid. I never had to think about this hunting my entire life, or even going outside for any reason. And now I've got a small son, 3 years old. Basically every time I hunt in national forest around here, any public lands, there is the chance. Even sometimes it's more remote than others. Other times it's more elevated than others. But there always is a chance that I'm going to run into a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
Always. And it's a different feeling.
And that's why we love the wilderness.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
take the bear out of it, it's not the same wilderness.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That I always say, like, if you would remove, and we've done this as a nation, like remove the predators from the environment with the elk. The elk aren't elk anymore if they're not being preyed upon by these things that have chased them. So their elkness is derived somehow by their instincts that are elevated by
they evolved with
predator.
Wolves, cougars, whatever.
So the way we think of elk is very much informed by the
and
predators.
Our pronghorn is faster than any carnivore. Right. It evolved with a North American cheetah, which was a lion that they found in sinkholes in Wyoming, which is really interesting. There were 4 pronghorn at one time. There's 6, I forget which, some double-horned and all that sort of stuff, but there's only 1 left. But that baby can run, nothing can catch that.
The American pronghorn is really interesting.
Oh, I studied them for 2 years.
One.
Yeah, it was wonderful. In Yellowstone, mostly scent marking. It was sort of technical stuff, but I just loved going out watching pronghorn behavior. Yeah.
They are interesting. Well, one thing, like during the attack that you already mentioned, but I wanted to return to, in the hours after the attack, when things were pretty dire, you wrote that you said that you asked that the bear not be destroyed. That's the quote, the words you used, that the bear not.
Right. One of the rangers told me about how many bears they'd killed, and that I can remember the sort of anger welling up in me, saying, "Please don't do that. Don't track this bear." They knew it went downhill. Bloody footprints were downhill. I never saw the day of that, of course. I didn't see anything after that. Yeah. But I have color slides of the rescue because the helicopter pilot grabbed my 35 millimeter camera and took pictures, which is crazy.
Wow.
It's great.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the stories, as I was reading of your rescuers, were as interesting as anything, the people that they were. And
isn't that neat? Yeah. Jim Thompson did a wonderful job describing it. I quoted him completely in the book because he talked about he'd been 2 tours in Vietnam, and that day he had more adrenaline pumping than on any operation in Vietnam. So, and he isn't a guy that exaggerates easily.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
All right, that's it. That's all, Philip. Another episode in the books, episode 95. We are the substitute teacher showing you a movie. No, in all seriousness, I am likely, again, I'm speaking to you in the future tense. I'm speaking to you, future Phil. And I'm assuming that you in the future are very happy that I've had my child.
I am, and since I'm future Phil, I've uploaded my consciousness into the computers.
Listen, Star Wars.
Into the Matrix.
Slow it down. Slow it down, Skywalker.
So, you're actually speaking to a computer right now.
That's true.
I've left my body.
I can't wait till we get an AI Phil, and I don't have to deal with the real Phil, because it is getting...
Yeah, me too.
It's really...
That'll be so much nicer.
It's really bad. We could send you off into space or whatever. I'm assuming that I'm having my child right now, that I'm not connected. My plan at this point, even speaking to my future self, my plan at this point is to disconnect from all media. No phone, no internet, during the first 2 weeks of my child's life, my new baby's life, in order to connect. Disconnect in order to connect, Phil. You can pick him at what I'm
Speaking of, that's like the science bullshit that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Connect to disconnect.
Disconnect in order to connect.
So if you're looking for me right now, I'm likely disconnected, and I'm spending time with my family, which I very much appreciate in all seriousness. So there's no way I could do any of that stuff without you guys, without all the great folks here at Meat Eater, without all the great guests that we've had on this show that allow us to just run out our favorite little clips. So we're going to close that out next week. Next week, Volume 4 of the Best Ofs, right, Phil? Volume 4.
The last one.
There are outdoor legends. The legends of the outdoors, including Colonel Tom Kelly, guys like Jim Posowitz, and more. So stick around for that next week. The final installment of your favorite Best of THC. Bye.
Too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven. Sitting as the boss who starts to grow roots. I'm feeling like an old worn out pair of shoes. Oh, tell me what is it that I should
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
As you know, the Meat Eater live tour is on April 23rd through May 5th. Chances are in a town near you. What you may not know is you can win tickets to each of these events just by going to a backcountry hunters and anglers pint night. There's going to be a pint night in each of these towns: San Diego, Salt Lake City, Tempe, Anaheim, Boise, Sacramento, Missoula, Portland, Tacoma, where you can compete in Meat Eater trivia and win not only tickets to the show, but a chance to be on stage with all of us. So get your butt to a pint night, and we'll see you on stage.